Alright, what's up guys? Dice here, and today we're gonna be doing a little different video from my usual type of content. Today, we are going to rank every single story chapter released in NA so far. And today I have a few guests. I have Steven, say hi.
Hey, what's up?
And I have Mono.
Hello.
Here are some friends I have in real life that we all have caught up to the most latest story chapter in Fate Grand Order. And so, yeah, we're just gonna rank all the story chapters. Before we begin, let me just explain here. The EX tier is only reserved for the absolute best of the best chapters. A is for great chapters. B is good. C is some middle of the road chapters, not terrible, not impressive. D is below average, and then E is reserved only for the real stinky ones.
F doesn't exist because, come on, at that point, why would you?
Now, I decided to keep this similar to parameters, you know, the FGO stats, you know, how EX is like super crazy powerful, and E is usually for like weaker stats. But yeah, before we formally begin this, I just want to introduce very briefly how I got into the Fate series, so y'all know what my preferences are. I started out with the original Fate anime that came out in, like, I don't know, 2006, made by Studio Dean, which I thought was pretty mid. Then I played Fate Extra, which was just amazing. I loved everything about it. I had decided I want to know more about this universe, so I basically read through the original Fate Stay Night visual novel and all that good stuff. How did you get into Fate series, Steven?
Well, in my case, I didn't really know much about Fate when I started, because the first exposure to it was just the original Fate Stay Night anime, the really old one. And I remember I found it okay. It was kind of boring. Then I saw that Zero was a thing, and as I watched it, I was like, okay, this was like, the animation got better, but I felt like the storytelling was a little more boring for some reason. At least at the time. Now I find it much better. And eventually, through Dice, I eventually got into FGO, and I was like, okay, now this is more fun. I started exposing I got exposed to other Fate franchises, and, so on from there.
What about you, Mono? How did you get into the Fate series?
I don't really remember when, like the day specifically, but it was with you when we were hanging out in a friend's house. And you told me to, like, hey, have you heard of this game Fate? And so it looked intriguing, and so I downloaded it, I played it for a bit. It kind of lost my interest after a certain point, because it was, like, the story was indeed a little slow at the start. And so I deleted it. And then a couple days later, he asked me about it, and I was like, oh yeah, I completely forgot I deleted it. And so I decided to re-download it to give it a second chance, and that's when the Camelot chapter was released. I wasn't really near Camelot at the time. This is me refreshing. And yeah, after...
That was when you got Ozzy, right?
Yeah, that was my first ever 5-star. After getting Ozzy, I was very obsessed with him because he was my legitimate first 5-star. And in that reason, I essentially bond grailed him up to 11 right now. And amazing. I have him max grailed because I was very obsessed with him. Like, he would not leave my team.
Well, max grail now is like a level 100, you mean? Because level 120 is actual max grail, but obviously, like, that's crazy whale stuff.
No, man, that's just crazy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of want to level 120 Raiko. Pray for me, people. Yeah, but moving back to the story for FGO. So, start things off, we have the Fuyuki chapter, and honestly, I know exactly where I'm going to put this one, mid. Because I remember when FGO first came out, and there was a lot of hype behind it. I remember the download taking a while, because a lot of people were downloading the game. I remember before I started my mass rerolling session to get waiver, I decided to read the chapter of FGO, the first prologue chapter with Fuyuki, and I thought it was alright. I know this game's story was praised a lot, but I was like, I don't really see it. It's not bad, but it's not really that terrible. But it's not impressive. It's not bad, but it's not impressive, is what I mean.
Yeah, I remember when I started the game, I really thought that it was kind of slow. Like, if you think about it, most Fate franchises, most Fate stories always start very slow. But it took a while for me to really get into the whole story. I remember trying to speed run through it because I was like, okay, I was starting out a new game, which is every time I start a new game, I tend to get really carried away. But you know, the first few stories singularities are kind of meh in my opinion.
Oh, we'll get to those eventually.
Oh yeah, for sure.
For me, it wasn't bad. It was a nice introduction because it just felt because the whole point of Fate was essentially you correcting the singularities that are essentially like stopping humanity from progressing. And so how it started, I found it interesting. And so Fuyuki, it's not bad, but it does have its downsides.
It's more like it's aged down, you know, or more like it's definitely a product of when it started, as opposed to comparing it now, because it's like
Yeah,
it's like
they
you
take
said,
the FGO story takes itself a lot more seriously. It's
Yeah.
rather than just being a simple side game. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, like once you in the newest chapters, once you reach them at some point, you'll notice that the whole lore goes way deeper than it started out in like
Yeah.
Fuyuki.
I'd
and
say
Aliens and all
honestly,
that.
in terms of the actual story for Fuyuki, in my opinion, I think the absolute biggest problem with it is that they killed off Olga at the end. Now, I'm not against the idea of Olga being killed, but I think they did it way too early because we do know
yeah.
we barely like got to know about the story and characters in this game. I think it would have been more impactful if they killed her off. I don't know, maybe at the end of
Midway.
at the end of Septem. Imagine.
Yeah, around midway of the story, that would have definitely made more of an impact. Because, like you said, you didn't really get to know the character as much, and now add to that the fact that she's just randomly back as the big boss. That you've been warily trying to avoid fighting all this time, and you're like, okay, it's a nice reveal, but I just feel like it would have more of an impact if you had gotten to know Olga way more. And aside from that, the only other exposure to Olga that we've had recently is in Elmaloy Case Files. And it's not even the actual, it's not the Olga that we have in FGO. It's a completely different timeline. Because as you know, the Fate series has just a bunch of different timelines. Some that are parallel, some that are just different like routes. So, it goes like that.
If they didn't kill Olga so early, it would have changed a portion of the outcome for Fate, because at that point, wouldn't she have been able to become a master? Because then there would have been two masters.
No, she was the director of Chaldea.
No.
I think they did that because they probably wanted to give Chaldea more agency. The master to have more freedom rather than constantly listening to Olga. But in a way, like with the recent story chapters with Gordolf, with Gordolf, he is in charge of like Chaldea, but we almost never listen, and we basically go off script all the time. So
even his dialogues are all like, but
in recent story chapters, he's definitely a lot more.
Yeah, he's definitely loosening up more. But the reason why Gordo lets us do that at this point is because he knows deep down all the risks that the master is constantly taking, and he probably has an idea of how messed up his mind is at this point. Well, I mean, you saw in Lostbelt 6 how he just suddenly got back up in the that world he was trapped in, where Castor couldn't even get back up, and he's just suddenly I'm back.
The main character, right?
Yeah.
The Garden of Lost Wills, I think it was.
We'll get to that more when we get to the Lostbelt 6 story. We have a lot more to get through, but move on. We got Orleans now.
Nope.
Let me just say that I strongly feel that this story chapter deserves to be at E tier. Not just because it's not a very well written story chapter, but because I personally feel that when people first get into FGO and they hear about, what a good story it has, when they're trying to get into it, this is going to be the first real, quotations, real story chapter they eat through. And it does not make a very good first impression. That meme that people have years ago about how One Piece or Naruto only get good after like 100+ episodes, and that they're really bad at the beginning. Personally, I don't agree with that at all. I think One Piece was great from the start, but that's unironically true for FGO, because FGO, like, the first story chapters just weren't very good. You could tell that this game, they didn't take the storytelling very seriously. It was clearly just meant to be a side project.
Actually, the way I see it is that the first few singularities were more of a promotion work. Like, if you notice, a lot of the characters that appear in each singularity don't even have anything to do with the actual country that they're on. Like, for example, in Orleans, a lot of characters don't even belong in France. they do have some of the French servants there, but a lot of them don't really have any business there aside from the fact they just needed to fill up fodder, and they needed more characters to beat or more stakes. But it feels like they're just using all the characters that were available at the time to, portray, oh yeah, you want to summon them, you want to get these characters, like, oh yeah, here's Martha, here's Marie Antoinette and all these characters.
Like John.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Jalter wasn't even a thing until way later, like a year later.
Yeah, this is the story chapter that introduced Jalter, right? Like, I mean, you're the resident Jalter fan here, Steven. How do you feel about it?
Oh my god. Okay, so taking a break from all this, anyone that watched the damn stream last night, we went to the fucking Reddit, right? Like just a few hours ago, and there's this guy or woman, I don't fucking know. He's a hell of a Jolter fan, kind of like I am, and I swear at that point it seemed like I wrote it in my sleep, because he was ranting about how there was no animation updates, no new quality of life content.
Great minds think alike.
I think his words were more something like, "Wow, that most gacha games would kill to have a character as popular as Jalter, and yet Jalter has like bobblehead animations, very little lines of dialogue. It's really weird, honestly.
It's not even weird. It's just frustrating. The whole Jalter getting screwed over for over 8 years at this point is just sad, and it makes me think, do I really want to keep playing the game sometimes? Like I've been saying to Dice for like over a year now that if Lostbelt 7 arc ends, more like when it ends, and if they suddenly want to continue the story with some other bullshit, I'd probably just drop the game at that point, because I don't see any other reason to play at this point if they're just gonna keep making the same stuff all over again.
It's there's really not much to say. Orleans was just very boring.
I still remember like the first. I remember how it ended. It stuck with me because it was like, it felt really.
It was just bland.
Yeah, because essentially the whole Singularity was created because.
But they needed a first story. They needed a first story, but at the same time, they might as well promote the characters we have available. And when you think about it, most of them were just gacha. I remember when I started playing Orleans, I legit thought after you get Kukaster in the first in Singularity F, I thought, oh, does that mean we get a free character every time? I was like, oh, we're gonna get any of the 4 stars?
Technically, we did get free characters at the start.
Yeah, but those characters are technically you can get them through the friend point better, which that's another thing that needs fixing. For oh my god, like friend points, why do we even have them aside from the fact when they add once every 5 years a new 4-star character? Like Habertrot is broken, and I'm glad I finally got a Champion 5. But aside from that, what's the point of having friend points? Like. And remind you
they have Grail casting. You can use the servant. You can use the servant coins to make Grails.
And that is the problem. At the end of the day, FGO has just become like every other basic gacha that doesn't care about anything except money. It's just farming. Get a new character. Now you gotta farm materials, and then you use that same character for farming even more. And like, what's the point? But,
yeah. Anyway, I think we exhausted Orleans.
I'll agree with Orleans being an E.
Yeah. Okay, so Septem. So let me just clear up. I really liked the Nero in Fate Extra. She was the first servant I picked when I started the game. So I thought to myself, wow, a Nero-focused story chapter. How could this possibly go wrong? By being E tier. That's how it could go wrong.
I totally agree there. Septem was just as bad, if not worse. I barely remember anything from it. Honestly, like I played this game a little over. I think it was a few months after it came out into NA. But the point is that the story is just not good. It's not very memorable at all, and even the final boss was just a random
Altera. Because you see, it's funny that you say that FGO was just used for advertised random characters from other Fate properties, because I believe at the time Fate Extella hadn't been released yet. It was coming to be released soon. And what they really did was just have Nero and Altera show up in the same story chapter to advertise Fate Extella. I remember a few months later when you remember the Skahak
that's
quest.
where I started.
Yeah, the Skahak the little mini interlude quest for Skahak. They had Altera show up as well, and yeah, you could tell he was really just for advertising, because Altera didn't really... It felt very out of place.
I gotta confess, I think one of the main reasons why I got to FGO at some point was because I saw Skath. I was like, Dice told me, oh yeah, she's the master of cool, and I was like, oh really? And then when I saw, I was like, oh okay, I see where we're going with this. I remember pulling, and I didn't get her, and I was so disappointed. And like then came the announcer for Jolter, and I was like, okay, and then all these posts and save for her, the whole Simpsons meme and all that. And I literally, it took over 400 coins just to get Jolter. That was so frustrating. I was just happy I got her.
Yeah, this was before pity too.
Oh yeah, for sure. And this is like early.
God. Imagine pulling without pity. That would have been a nightmare.
No, I don't have to imagine pulling without pity. I did that.
We lived through it,
for like almost 6 years.
Exactly. So, and then after I got Jolter, I was like, okay, now I'm gonna save up for whatever other servants came out, summer for first summer and all that stuff. But then when Scoth came back, I was determined to get her, and I got so lucky. I think I got her in like one multi or something like that. I was so freaking happy. And then Raiko comes on later. I ended up getting her super early too. And if you've been watching Dice's videos, you know that that's probably his go-to servant for like one of his favorite at this point. So I was like, oh shit.
I haven't made an FGO video in a very long time though. Yeah, I wanted to do like a reaction to the stream as one of my videos, but that stream, honestly, like I only have like about 40 minutes of footage recorded, and I honestly wish I had 0 minutes of footage recorded for it, because it means I wouldn't have wasted time with whatever the fuck was going on. Because I remember someone reading that like the stream only exists so Albert can have a paid vacation in Japan, and that sounds really mean, but sometimes I think that's unironically what happened. Yeah, so Septem was very boring, had a bunch of characters that didn't really matter and stuff that was just advertisement for Xtella. And notice that, I think something I didn't point out is that Lev Liner, one of the Demon Pillar, he gets killed by Ultra there. I mean, obviously he doesn't actually die because he appears again in like the Solomon, like the final singularity. But yeah, I remember thinking it was super weird that they just, again, killed off a character when we just barely knew anything about them. And
I think it shows at that point they still weren't like very confident in storytelling.
Lev appeared in Fuyuki. He appeared in technically before Fuyuki. He appeared in Septem, and that's it. He didn't really appear in Orleans. He barely appeared in Septem except the end.
I mean, I guess in a way it's okay that they killed him early on, because as far as a villain goes, there's only so much you could have done with him. It's not like he got that much background story. He was a pillar. He was
but still, it's kind of like it's a similar.
The way they killed him, it was so random.
That's mostly what I mean. It's kind of like Olga, where I feel like that the idea of killing him isn't bad, but they could have been handled a bit better. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Okeanos, the first story chapter released post-launch. I'm pretty confident putting this at D tier. What do you think?
D is fine, because the story, that's where I started getting a little more into the story, even though it wasn't that good, but at least it was more entertaining than the previous two. So that's probably why it feels better, because comparing it to the last two singularities, it's just better. But aside from that, it's still very early FGO vibes.
Yeah, it's still not great. It's clear that we're not there yet.
Yeah.
I liked it. It wasn't that bad. But like looking back on it now, nostalgia wise, the fights that you had to do against like Jason's crew, it was god.
Oh, and then Jason gets turned into a demon pillar, because really, why?
Honestly, Jason was pretty pathetic even back then. They were trying to make him.
It's funny how they made him such a bad guy, and then suddenly he becomes one of the best characters in Atlantis. So that was
that's an amazing turnaround. That's something we'll talk about more. But yeah, it's essentially like later story chapters of FGO take characters that appeared early on and say, okay, how about putting them in a good story chapter?
Now, where are the animation updates for all those servants, though? Because let's face it, they redeem a lot of characters, but I don't see them making animation updates for Leonidas or any other servant that's appeared in anime already. So there's no excuse. Or even Arcade, for that matter, which is a completely different topic. But at this point, it's like, come on, man.
Noted the last time JP got animation updates hold on. The last time JP got animation updates was in March of 2022. So we're almost at 2 years without animation updates. I find that very interesting. Not a good interesting, but interesting nonetheless.
It's weird that some old characters got like animation updates while others didn't. Like I can't really
The way
I
they
don't-
choose them is just random. That's the
Yeah.
weird. It's
Yeah.
like they throw darts at a table and they say, okay, this is the one that's getting animation
Like I feel like
updates.
I feel like the one 4-star.
Well, back when
like,
they did them.
old
Yeah.
4-star that actually got an animation because they're like, oh no, people are gonna like really want him to get updated now. The one that stuck with me the most is that Hercules got animation updates, and I still remembered how bad his animations were back then.
Yeah, because back then they
yeah,
had,
sure.
yeah, all
I
the,
used them a lot before.
Yeah, they-
he
yeah,
animated.
It felt so. I don't even have Hercules. That's how much it stuck with me. I wanted him, didn't have him. When I used him, I was like, what did they do to him?
Yeah.
It felt so. They butchered
yeah.
him.
Speaking of
now he looks good.
yeah, speaking
Now
of
he looks
speaking
really
of
well
Hercules
done.
and Okeanos, remember that one stretch of story in Okeanos that was literally just fight Hercules multiple times?
I mean, to be fair,
Yeah,
at this
that
point,
was-
that's just a running gag because like there's the challenge quest, and then there's the memorial quest where you have to fight the mega Hercules with Columbus. So like Hercules definitely a staple go-to boss. Even in the Fate anime,
That
he's
fight
always
was
there.
awkward.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't remember it, but all I know is that I liked Columbus. Columbus came out to be the bad guy. I didn't
Now,
know how to
obviously,
feel afterwards.
everyone that's read a history book at some point knows that we saw that coming
Yeah.
along. My
Yeah,
way,
but I feel like Okeanos is not there. Yeah, point is Okeanos wasn't there yet.
it was
and-
better than the last two, but not by much.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
moving on. Now London, I
Put
think
that thing at the bottom, please.
Put
Like,
that, no, put that below
well, where do you
everyone
think? Where
Put
does
that
this
below
stack up? Do you think
everyone
this
else.
is like better than Septem, worse than Septem? What do you
Put that
think?
below everyone else.
Yeah, that's
The
like
fact that
I
we-
would put it. Honestly, I would put it in between.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Okay.
Yeah, because it's okay. Or Orleans is just bad because it's the first story and it's just pathetic. Septim is okay. Actually, you know what? Okay, the reason why London has to be in the middle is because it's already a progressive story at this point. Like it's already like the fifth singularity or fourth singularity. I remember
Fourth.
fourth singularity, and it's still shit. So at that point, you deserve to be lower than Septim because come on, man! Like you had the potential, you had good characters showing up like Mordred and
Mordred felt
yeah,
so
yeah,
out of place.
Yeah,
though.
yeah, because you see the thing
'Cause
is,
this is
the
like-
thing is that the Fate Apocrypha anime was going on at the time, and obviously it wasn't going on at the time when this chapter came out in JP, but you can tell that it was still that same vibe of the early FGO where they just got a bunch of random characters and put them in a chapter not because they added anything to the story, but because they just wanted to advertise their rate up. And speaking of random characters that were added, remember Lancer Alter?
yeah.
Like how she just shows up and has like I don't even remember if
Mufasa, right?
no
Darth Vader,
the
Vader.
the one we call Darth Vader.
Basically, Mufasa Alter.
Altria Pendragon Lancer Alter.
Yeah, the one with the shit animations.
I keep forgetting. Like you
She
guys
exists.
have all these different names for them.
Okay, so just to be quick, we have a few nicknames for certain characters, like how MHXX Alter is the Darth Maul, because for obvious reasons. Darth
Saber
Vader.
Wars was a thing. So
Yeah,
then,
Darth
yeah.
Vader is Mufasa. Sorry, it's
Lancer Alter.
Yeah, Lancer Alter. Mufasa is Lion King, so hence Mufasa. So but like it's like guys, it's like, some of these servants just have no place here. Tamamo appearing at the near end of the story makes no sense.
Digitoki appeared near with her too.
Kintoki just appears because Tesla's using lightning, so let's use another character that has lightning.
Golden.
That's a theme.
I love.
Yeah, and that
Kintoki.
Tesla was also another weird one that they.
Yeah,
they
I mean
just
he's
showed
not
up in
even
there.
British. Why the hell was he even there for?
Honestly, it doesn't
so
really.
weird,
Yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't really bother me if a character shows up
Okay,
and
but-
they are part of the theme of the singularity, but it's still super weird that
Yeah,
when
but they have a lot of. How many British servants were at?
well,
at the
technically,
time?
this will not be the last time a story chapter that takes place in Britain happens.
Well, yeah, I mean
So-
clearly because like Camelot's been done like twice already, and there's probably going to be a third one. Oh wait, I know the next
Summer
summer
Dance,
is Camelot again. Camelot 3.
Yeah. Londinium also had a problem where it was like a mystery story where we were trying to figure out who was causing the fog.
They're
and-
basically doing a Sherlock Holmes.
yeah,
stuff.
but the thing is that there were a lot of fake outs, and at some point you just stop caring because it's just.
Even I don't remember.
I
that.
think the most impactful thing London did, and in my opinion, this makes it slightly better than a lot of the other story chapters, is Solomon's appearance at the very end. That was
That was really
because I think the biggest problem with the singularities is that compared to the Lostbelt arc, it feels very disconnected. There's not a lot of
yeah.
connective tissue.
Yeah, they're not constantly going back and touching up on the past experiences.
Lostbelt art feels like a continuous storyline, but the singularities all feel very episodic, and I think I understand why they did that, because all of them are being written by different writers. I mean, the Lostbelts are also being written by different writers, but still, I feel like they
realize that you have to have a connection to each singularity, or in this case, Lostbelt, because otherwise it just falls apart.
But the thing is that the most important part of this scene was shown off in a single short scene in the Babylon anime, remember? Remember in the Babylon anime, there was like one of the episodes starts with Solomon's appearance at the end of London, because they sometimes show flashbacks to different singularities.
That's the first time you fight him.
They just showed a flashback to Solomon in London, and honestly, that's probably the most impactful story thing that happened in between Fuyuki and Camelot. That's why, in my opinion, anime for all those singularities isn't really necessary, because, like I said, there isn't really any much connective tissue. I know that, for example, in Orleans, MASH talks with, I think it was Mozart, about how you will, I think it was something about how when you love something, you'll protect it with your very life, which connects to what she does in the Solomon singularity. But other than like tiny scenes like that, there's just not enough connective.
That just feels like they added it on at the end because they remember, oh yeah, like how do we connect the first singularity to the last one? Okay, let's just add this from that scene. And,
yeah, and I feel like, MASH protecting the main character and dying in the process was something that they probably planned out, because I remember when you go to the game's database and you look up Solomon's Noble Phantasm, it says something like, this has the power of like 10 more billion Excaliburs. No Noble Phantasm on Earth can protect it. But then you see like that MASH has a shield. Noble Phantasm, and your first thing you think of is, okay, so basically she's gonna protect us, right?
I mean, not just that, she's supposed to be Galahad, which is like the considered the greatest knights.
But other than that, like I said, singularities have very little connective tissue connecting them all as a cohesive narrative, which really affects the status of the game. Now, before we begin, now we continue, I just want to point out that after this, we got the Garden of Order event, which, in my opinion, had a much better story chapter than every other chapter released before that.
Which says a lot about how the story was
I feel
going.
like that's when the story really was taking itself seriously. Same with the prison event with Dantes. It was short, but
the prison event.
but it was very short, but it actually.
Like Dantes, so you're kind of biased.
I've never gotten Dantes, man, and I'm obsessed with him because of
who knows? You'll be able to choose your characters for your own paid banner.
Because he's no longer in the paid banner.
They remove him. They remove him in JP, unfortunately. But
are you kidding me?
But don't worry, he gets another raid up soon.
I'm forced to get him then.
But the point is that we're not going to be rating every story chapter here, which is also why you guys don't see for some like the BB event here, or
we're mostly
or the imaginary scramble, even though or the Kama event, even though those are chapters that are relevant to the main story, they're not, like actual part of like the main story. Basically, my ranking works like this: if you need rare prisms to play through the story, it's not gonna be here. This is just for main story. Anyway, moving on. So when I played through, point is, Shiki event came out, awesome story. Maybe America will be better, right? No. Honestly, no.
America's fine at D, honestly, because let's face it, even though it's
actually, I think I would rate this up a little bit better than Okeanos. Actually,
it's fine because so as far as storytelling, not that good, but at least it has some good characters that it kind of makes up for it, not by much, but Skahas appears, Karna and Arjuna appear.
Honestly, I'm tempted to put actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm tempted to put it at C tier, maybe. I don't know, because the thing is that it introduced Maeve, and in all honesty, like,
I love Maeve.
I think Maeve is probably one of the better villains FGO had, especially in year one.
But the thing is,
she's just revels in just being an absolute bitch. I love it. She's basically like the Jack Horner of FGO in a certain way.
Oh, yes. For anyone that doesn't know who Jack Horner is,
please watch Puss in Boots: The Last Wish.
Yes. So I would still leave it at D, because even though it does have some highlights like the certain characters and all that, the storytelling is still shit. Like,
yeah, you could tell that. Yeah, remember when they had only like 3 American servants and 2 of them get killed by Arjuna halfway
okay,
through
to
the
be
story?
fair, it's like that's like you said. At this point, caring about how many characters from the actual country are.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that bothers me personally. It felt very weird that this was a big America-focused story chapter, and there were only 3 American servants. I mean, I vividly remember early on Maeve mentioning the story that she kills George Washington before we arrive, and I was thinking to myself,
why didn't we see that?
like, yeah, it's so weird that this is George Washington, a major like hit figure in American history, and he just gets killed off like randomly, like if he's just a dumb side character. Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's not a bad story, but the ending, I just kind of like.
Yeah.
Like I already saw the ending.
Oh yeah, and then the whole Eye of the Tiger thing with Lee Shu and
Oh
Scott.
yeah. Because the thing is that Skahak, she appears, gets killed by Kualter, and then psych, she's not actually dead,
Yeah.
and then like Lee Shu and Lancer appear, and they sort of fight at the end. Yeah.
And then they just leave it and like it just fades to black. You're like, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. That was definitely one of the FGO moments of all time.
Yep.
But yeah, it's kind of like, speaking of wasted characters, I just want to point out Romulus in the Septem arc. Because Romulus, the founder of Rome, you'd think he'd have a major role in the story, but instead he's just he's just a random boss fight, and not even... Yeah, no, the thing is, Romulus is just a random boss fight, and I don't know how true this is. Allegedly, I remember reading, I don't know how true this is, that apparently that the FGO devs, if they could go back and redo any story chapter, they would redo Septem, but have Romulus be a 4-star character and have him be more prevalent in the Septem story. I don't know if that's even true, honestly. I feel like that's wishful thinking from people, but personally, even if it is wishful thinking, I agree, because Romulus definitely deserved a much bigger role in that chapter.
Yeah, I mean, Romulus is definitely a wasted opportunity there, because even though they did make another version of him later on.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah, but if you notice, this is a very different type of Romulus. That's like what you would picture the founder of Rome to be. But if you notice, Romulus, the original version, first of all, I think he looks more Persian there, which is weird. I don't know, maybe that's just me from the 300 movie, because the way they like designed him. But the fact that he holds one of the top 3 strongest lances in the Fate universe, and he just he's a 3-star that barely has any value. It's definitely a wasted opportunity.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, there's much to talk about here. So moving on, we got finally the one that was actually good. Now I remember the hype for Camelot was amazing. Like I remember people commenting once, I think it was like a Facebook post or whatever, someone saying I started the NA version of FGO even though I have a JP account because I want to read Camelot, like not through a fan translation or like a summary. I want to actually, and I was like, wow, this must be like a huge story chapter. I wasn't impressed so far with the story, but so I was like waiting. Mostly, honestly, I'm gonna be honest, I was mostly excited for Ramses, because, yeah, just as a side note, I remember the first time I played Fate Stay Night, I was thinking, whoa, dude, imagine like an Egyptian servant, that would go so hard. And I remember seeing, I remember seeing Ozymandias for the first time in FGO, and thinking, oh my god, this is the guy from The Prince of Egypt.
Not to mention he's voiced by Dio.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, no, point is, I thought he was perfect. He was literally everything I wanted in an Egyptian servant.
God, just looking back at Camelot, like I was when I read down.
Yeah. Anyway, by the way, that this is EX tier. Like it does not deserve anything lower than that, because I think because this story chapter, let me just point out, it had incredible. First, the music. By God, the music is amazing. Like I remember watching like the flashback little mini trailers that Anyclex posted in the channel, and as soon as those like familiar like piano notes, like dun 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 dun, like I was like, oh my god, that was like a huge flashback.
The characters that were even introduced, it really like.
Oh yeah, the characters.
All the characters that were shown, they fit well into their.
Yeah, I really, when you think about it, this story chapter is more so about Bedivere rather than Chaldea. Like this was really his personal story, his journey, and I remember Bedivere, he was introduced in Fate Stay Night at the very end of the Fate route as the guy who threw Excalibur in the lake, and he wasn't very interesting back in the day, but here it really just made him to an actual like character with his own motivations and journey. It was just incredible. I just loved Camelot.
I mean, and I was thinking of putting in more in A tier.
Oh, really now?
Because I feel like, as far as the storytelling goes, it's definitely one of the best ones. I totally agree on that. But maybe that's just me. The music is good, and they had some of the hardest fights at the time. Like Gawain, my God, that was so freaking hard to do back then. And it has memorable moments, and like the reveal of Mash's servant. It was Galahad. That's why he meets Sherlock for the first time.
Yeah.
So all that was really cool. But then you have the final fight against Mufasa, which was kind of underwhelming in my opinion. Like, it wasn't bad, but I don't know. I just felt like it was, compared to like other fights like Gawain, Tristan, and Lancelot, Mufasa's fight was kind of meh.
Yeah, I remember the first time they did a memorial quest for Camelot, they actually had Gawain, not Mufasa.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but speaking of the gameplay, it's like what I mentioned. Like, this is also the time where the gameplay actually became much better, because previously I remember the America story chapter. The last few bosses were against Kualter, and it was just very lame that you have to fight him 3 times in a row, and you can just Gable alternative him over and over and over. And
remember when the chapters that was just pure story, you actually have to use stamina.
Oh yeah, no, but at least this time around, they had a 0 stamina story. That's another brilliant thing that I'm not sure if Camelot introduced it. I think I remember seeing it first in the Journey to the West event, but it being used in the major story chapter, that happened in Camelot first, and that was much needed, because you don't have to have gameplay all the time. Sometimes you can just slow down and just have some like character moments. That's actually pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah. And like I said, the gameplay was just much better designed. You could tell that they actually knew what the hell they were doing with FGO here. General, I don't think we can sing the praises of Camelot more. This is amazing. Now, Babylon. Would you put us at EX tier, A tier? What do you guys think?
In between A, honestly, because for me, EX is like one of those a story chapter that it just has those moments that I'm just so hyped that I just freaking loved everything about it, or at least it's very memorable. Babylon, is memorable, but now more so than ever because of the anime. Because when I played through it, it was hard, and it was pretty fun, but there's there's a little too much conversation.
The Lamus.
Yeah, exactly. The Lamus are some of the hardest
normal enemies. Yeah, they were just normal, and they were like, holy shit.
But the problem that I have with Babylon is that even though it was the longest chapter, it was a little too long, because some parts are just unnecessary conversations that don't really need to be, that they don't hold that much purpose in the storytelling. But overall, the storytelling was very entertaining. There's some comedic moments that actually made the story more fun.
Like when Gilgamesh died due to overwork.
Exactly.
And you have to go to the underworld, and I think you have to answer these questions that are basically Ereshkigal taking the piss out of Ishtar all the time. That was great.
The first time Ereshkigal was introduced, and let me tell you right now, I fell in love with that chick quickly.
Same.
So I was so glad when I finally got her and she finally came, because I used all my cores, didn't get her, had to buy some more, and at the end of when I was practically running out is when I finally got her.
Don't bang the table too much.
And then Mono comes in. He just pulls, and this fucker just gets her really quickly. I wanted to kick his ass.
The moment I see that Ereshkigal is in the banner, I'm like, huh? Oh wait, it's Eresh. Okay, let's see how much I have. Yeah, that's enough quartz. I had I guess 100, maybe 110. I didn't have that many, so I was like, if I don't get her, it's fine. I'll just get her some rerun. I think my first 10 pull, I got her, and so I'm like, oh, sweet! I took a screenshot, showed it in chat, and then Steven just decides to automatically say, someone drive me to his house, I'm gonna slap him.
Yeah. I will say that Babylon, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I'd say the weirdest thing about Babylon, well, not weird, but just something that feels very weird writing, I guess, is just how... this is more obvious in the Babylon anime, but just how much of a harem protagonist they made the main character. And look, I get it. This is a gacha game where you collect waifus and shit.
I mean,
so,
most gacha games are like
yeah,
that when
but
you think about
but
Yeah.
still, the fact that in Babylon, like the Quetzalcoatl basically falls in love with the main character at first sight.
I mean, does she really?
Like,
Are you sure she wasn't just messing with him?
yeah, I honestly, like, it kind of feels that way, but at the same time, like, I don't know, it just feels.
I mean, maybe she just went to fuck.
Oh my god. And
He got that
Eresh also falls in love with the main character pretty much at first sight, and
Okay, but Aresh makes sense because let's face it, she's been down there in the underworld
Yeah.
alone all this time.
yeah, I
essentially the only human.
yeah, look, look, I'm not against like.
in general.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm not against like waifuism, but yeah, this felt overboard in this chapter. I feel like they could have held back on it a bit more.
Well, if you think about it, the part of the reason why the whole like a lot of
Yeah.
girls being
Yeah,
with the master
yeah.
is that they wanted to emphasize Mash's feelings too.
yeah,
Because you know that Mash clearly likes the protagonist,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, look, I'm saying that as a guy that grailed both versions of Raiko to 100 and is begrudgingly considering going for 120. You know, Raiko is part of the Stalker trio. I mean, I don't even know if it's a trio anymore. I'm pretty sure there's like 8 other servants that are obsessed with the main character. But yeah, I just feel like if they toned down on the waifu-ism on Babylon just a bit more, it could have been on par with Camelot. But yeah, a few tiny things like that held it back for me. Yeah.
Another thing in Babylon that I really enjoyed was when they finally mentioned Old Man of the Mountain. When they actually
Well,
showed
technically,
him,
King Hassan
really
first,
great.
King Hassan first appeared in Camelot.
yeah. When he caught
But
Ozzy's
yeah,
stuff.
but when he appeared above the pit and took away Tiamat's immortality, that was an incredible scene. I think
The fact that Tiamat's like myth behind her is that she doesn't really have an ending, so that she can't die.
yeah, she's immortal.
The fact that King Hassan literally gave her a sense of death implies how tough she is at the end of Babylon. That whole
I think that's
was, like,
I think
really
that's
incredible.
honestly, like, that stuff. That's another thing about the Babylon anime, which I thought it was pretty good for the most part, but I think the final battle, the way they portrayed it, was a bit lackluster. I remember in the game, the final battle, it was literally portrayed in like a visual novel style cutscene with 2D art, and it was very intense. Like the music, the atmosphere, everything was very intense. But I didn't get that same feeling in the anime. It just felt like a very basic servant fight, servants fighting a big god thing. But I didn't really get that same feeling of like urgency and like just sheer hype that I felt from the game.
Yeah, I felt like if anything they focused more on the smaller fights, like the Gorgon fight, like Leonidas when he was.
Yeah, dude, the Leonidas last stand against Gorgon. If anything, I felt like that was more hype than the actual final battle.
It really like gave the image of Leonidas always standing and fighting to encourage his
animation updates window.
Yeah. Anyway, we shilled Babylon enough. Next is Solomon. I think I'm pretty safe putting this in A tier. I actually think that out of all these 3 chapters, I'd say it's probably the weakest one. Not to say it's bad, but I think that
To be fair, it's mostly boss battles.
I feel like the ending was a bit rushed, if you ask me, because it's like you said, it's mostly boss fights. Most of the cutscenes are just us going through like the previous characters in the previous story chapter, where Jeanne d'Arc basically does her big Avengers Assemble moment, and they do the whole Ready Player One ending sequence where all the servants are from the events and story chapters coming in. Yeah, but very few of it was actually part of the story. And like Romani's reveal as Solomon, that was pretty huge, and I'm not against that idea, because if you notice, it was foreshadowed. But I remember just thinking like, wow, he just revealed himself as Solomon, and then like the next cutscene, he's basically sacrificing himself, and yeah, I feel like it could have been spaced out a bit more. Yeah, it's just like I said, it's a symptom of FGO singularities not having like very interconnected storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of the big emotional moments didn't hit. Yeah, they fell short. They didn't quite as hard as they wanted it to be.
Oh yeah,
especially like Mash's like sacrifice. I remember she sacrificed herself, and then literally like a few cutscenes later, she's back because
fairy tale moment right there.
Yeah.
Main character plot. That's it.
Yeah,
that's essentially what happened.
But still, I remember when the last story chapters were released after defeating the last of the raids, rushing back to a hotel room to read them, and at the end I just watched the credits and thought, that was pretty good. Like I remember just the way everything ended, the main character and Mash standing over the horizon, finally seeing the sky for the first time, not in a singularity.
Yeah.
I thought like the atmosphere feel of the ending was very well put together.
Yeah, that was fine. Like, but it's mostly just boss battles, raid bosses, and
I mean, you even saw like the movie. Like the movie doesn't really have
much
content to really go through. It basically,
except the bitch slap fight.
That's the main character and Goisha's last slap fight, which is a reference to Heaven's Feel. I don't know if you noticed now that you finished Heaven's Feel. The Kotomine and Shiro fight at the end.
Okay, but Kotomine and
but Kotomine and Shiro was way honestly was way better. Even though
right.
the last Heaven's Feel movie, I feel like that was also rushed in anime form, but still.
Something I also noticed was that I spoke to ZX about this. He mentioned it, and I realized that each boss battle you're doing inside Solomon's Singularity, you essentially realize that it's every servant from every chapter, and then the last one you do, because it doesn't really have its own respective chapter, it's essentially every event servant.
Yeah, Raiko appeared there. I remember.
Like every event servant, because I remember Dante's being there, if I'm correct, and
I think it's like Smash when everyone is here kind of thing, all of them started popping out.
That's why I said Ready Player One also did a similar final battle.
It was really nice. Yeah. I liked it.
Anyway,
now we're entering the territory.
Okay, so here's the thing: after the high highs of the ending of Solomon, the Epic of Remnant came out, or as people like to call it, Epic of Filler, which which really had me worried because I thought, how are they gonna top the last story chapter, which wasn't perfect but still pretty high.
It took a while.
No, you see, that's just it. They didn't.
Well, not at first.
Where do you put this? Like D tier, C tier?
Wait. Okay, so Shinjuku, I would put it at D.
Oh, all right. Where do you put this? Like worse than America, better than America?
Better than America, at least.
I mean, you know what? Yeah, that's fair enough. I'll allow it.
Mostly because at that point the fights were better. There was more saves.
Shinjuku is where the multiple HP bars were introduced.
Exactly. So it was more challenging.
And NA had something very interesting because I remember they had memorial quests in like the FGO tour. And that's when the first time we saw multiple HP bar with the Salter fight.
Oh god, that was hard.
So technically Shinjuku was the real introduction in terms of gameplay, I guess, in JP, but the first time NA saw it was the Salter fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, the story was pretty bland, but at least the gameplay difficulty started getting better.
Alright, yeah, but I just want to ask you, as our resident Jalter fan, how do you feel about Jalter getting focused on this story chapter?
Well, I mean, I was happy about it until I realized they never gave her animation updates. And then the summer version of her came out. I was like, oh, finally, we're getting summer Jalter. It's a freebie. I was so pissed because, it's nice that we have a summer version, but no multiple ascensions, my guy. It's like, why?
Yeah, I remember there was like this artwork of her in a different swimsuit.
Oh, yeah. It ended up being a craft essence. The ones that you get, you get to choose 2 every year.
Yeah. I remember that was so funny. It's like they can do better. They just choose not to. But
basically,
aside from that, overall Shinjuku, it was just
there's not much to talk about, honestly. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's just
the whole thing about Shinjuku, I remember that I had a similar problem with a lot of characters that just felt unnecessary to the general plot, and even the ones that are related to the main plot didn't really leave as much of an impact as they could. Okay, I had to be interrupted for a bit there, but to go back to Shinjuku, I remember the main characters there, like Moriarty. It felt really weird that they wanted that they were trying to do the whole thing where maybe he's a good guy or maybe he's a bad guy, but then turns out he's just a bad guy. It's like, he's one of the most famous villains in literature, so of course he's gonna be a bad guy. Like, it would have been a bigger twist if he was a good guy. And I know that they did the whole thing where he actually likes the main character and whatnot, but still, it felt like it could have been portrayed much better.
Yeah, no, I get it. Honestly, there wasn't really much point to it aside from the fact that they wanted to play an old trope where, is the typical bad guy really bad, or can he be redeemed or something like that?
Moving on, we just it's still it was a very sloppy chapter. Could have been done better. Not the absolute worst, but still.
Not a very good beginning
Yeah,
to a new
yeah.
arc.
Speaking of the absolute worst, Agartha.
Oh yeah,
Bam.
that's E all the way.
E all the way. I think honestly, I don't know. Look, this E seems a bit disorganized, but in all honesty, like this is a race for the bottom. I don't really care that much. So Agartha, really bad story chapter. A lot of the characters just felt like again like very wasted in this chapter. Like
It was bland, honestly. Like like they introduced some really good characters as far as like the designs, the personalities, and all that.
Yeah,
but
but
storytelling, it's just bad.
Yeah. It's just that I didn't really enjoy Agartha. I just
Let's just go.
honestly, yeah, I just don't want to talk about this story chapter. It's just so fucking weird and not in a good way. I just don't want to talk about it anymore. Anyway, Shimosa.
The one that saved everything.
Well, I know. I look. Fuck it. I'm putting E tier.
It is.
E
It
tier.
is.
And Shimosa is brilliant, dude. I remember the New Year Musashi and people were being hyped up because Musashi.
That's another one I had to go for.
Yeah, Musashi and New Year.
Musashi.
It's Miyamoto Musashi. It's like a very famous swords man in Japan, and introducing her was like got me very hyped. Like what is her deal? Like what's going on? So I went to Shimosa. Like right from the start of Shimosa, you could tell the storytelling was very different from everything else. Like just the way the narration went and the characters. It's just a great. Also, this is something I didn't really talk about in Shinjuku much, but or Agartha, but the true name bullshit. I hate it. I think it's a waste of time.
It really was.
Especially this late into the game. I get that the Fate series is all about figuring out a servant's true name, and that letting you like especially in Fate Extra, right, where the gameplay of Fate Extra revolves around discovering a servant's weakness and their true name. But
problem is that being an NA player, you're 2 years behind, and if you have access to internet at any point,
not to mention that it just feels really weird to do this late into the game in FGO.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, FGO characters are just known by their true names, so like I said, just doing it this late in the game was very weird. I think Shimosa is probably the only story chapter that does the true name mechanic justice aside from Lostbelt 6, because the Swordmaster duels, that you didn't really know what the 7 swordmen were all about. They was like Archer of Inferno, for example.
That's the only one I keep forgetting the name of.
Yeah, Tomo, yeah. But it makes sense that the Swordmasters would keep their name hidden until they fight, because they want to be at their absolute strongest when attacking Musashi, and it's honestly it's just an amazing chapter with just brilliant.
They also introduced Muramasa there, so that was
Muramasa. Oh, his scene where he uses his noble phantasm against Amaku Sashiro's reality marble, because his reality marble is like a Tokugawa castle, and Muramasa's all his swords killed the Tokugawas.
And then
it's like that was brilliant. Especially the music, like the remix of the Emiya thing, that was brilliant.
Add to that the final fight against
Kojiro versus Musashi is still like top 5 greatest battles in FGO in general.
That shot where you see Musashi just sitting down, kneeling after the fight, just like in the burning building, that was like so good. Like,
that was a solid ending to a solid chapter, and it's my top pick for the next anime adaptation for the Fate series, especially when you realize that Shimosa is really like the first Lostbelt chapter, essentially.
Yeah.
It introduced Doman too. Doman, who went on to be a major character and everything.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about how the anime could be like they did in Katanagatari, where each episode was like almost an hour long.
Yeah.
So instead of making it 24 episodes, it's basically the same amount, but in 12 episodes, or like the ReZero edit.
Yeah, there's a lot of things they can do, but overall,
it's great.
Yeah, it's just great.
I like that in Shimosa. Currently in Shimosa, this is the only one I can tell. Musashi does get an NP animation update, and I loved how I like.
When she uses the void and ching. Yeah,
and then they added that. I remember when she had an eye patch, so that was pretty funny.
It was great.
Yeah. Right. Moving on. We got Salem. I would put this at a B tier.
B tier is fine.
Maybe a little better than Solomon, a little worse than Babylon. I think Salem's a very short chapter that I believe my biggest problem with it is that it had to be like designed like a video game with a lot of fights, and I think if it was more so a visual novel like without any real fights, I think it would have been better written, honestly, because it was definitely a more like how would you describe it? Like a more slower, like more low key type of chapter compared to the intensity of Shimosa.
It is, because it feels more like you're reading an actual novel, like, you know, one of those, like, for example, like the Scarlet Letter vibe, kind of thing like that.
Also, I just find it funny that Salem just cuts out the true name bullshit almost altogether. There are only 2 servants that have the true name reveal, and they basically reveal their true name almost immediately as soon as you know they're servants. So you can tell that they basically, you can tell they basically gave up. Overall, for example, Abby was a great character.
Abby's.
I didn't mind getting spooked by her that much because I really wanted Shiva, but
I ended up getting Shiva at the end of my tickets. Like I had like over 50 tickets, and I ended up getting her at the last.
Overall, Epic of Remnant, 2 very meh chapters at the start and 2 very good chapters at the end. We had to interrupt a bit because we were out of time the last time, but we're gonna continue on the our ranking here for the story chapters of FGO, at least the ones released in NA so far. And last time we were talking about the Epic of Remnants, and honestly I think we did cover them pretty well. I did sound a bit rushed, especially towards the end, because we were very short on time. But if I had to say anything else about the Epic of Remnants, it's just it's Epic of Filler is a very appropriate title for them, but the quality of Salem, Shimosa prove that just because something is filler doesn't mean it's bad or irrelevant. It means it can still be good. Have anything to say, Steven?
Well, technically, you can't really say Shimosa's a filler anymore, but...
right.
Yeah.
It actually is basically like the prologue chapter for the Lostbelt arc.
Mm-hmm.
After all, it introduces like the concepts of the Lostbelts, introduced Doman. Musashi even shows up on a few of the Lostbelts as well.
Funny how her banner came around like months before that chapter was released.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Castor Ultrio was released. Basically a year.
Before,
Castor Ultrio was released like the year before Lostbelt 6 came out.
And then there's Muramasa, which was like 2 years or something like that.
Yeah, Muramasa was relevant in Shimosa, so it's not that weird.
No, but, you know, like, it's a character that was introduced early on, but they didn't bother making him a servant until way later. I'm like, okay, sure. Sometimes I think maybe it's just because they already had in mind that he would be a summonable servant, but after they had introduced, you know, the foreign god and all that kind of stuff, as he was supposed to be an alter ego.
It's probably worth searching for a good position to introduce him into the story and then introduce him as a playable character. It does make sense. Anything you want to add, Mono?
No, not really.
Alright, so in general, Epic of Remnant, it had a few connecting story themes, I would say, like the old man that tries to be nice at the beginning but then turns out to be a traitor. Honestly, by the end, you know, with Hopkins, the old guy from Salem, they didn't even try to hide the fact that he was evil.
I just realized that kind of feature where the old man ends up being the traitor happens in almost every single Remnant. Like the first one,
in all of them. Yeah.
The second one is Columbus. The third one is, well, I mean, in a way, the fast old man. Yagyu.
Munenori. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the last one is
Hopkins.
Yeah, basically HP Lovecraft.
I love that. I believe his name was Randolph Carter. Yeah, remember, Mono, you played Codename Steam, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, remember Randolph Carter in Codename Steam? He's the guy with the scientist with the tentacles coming out of the backpack and everything, the ult.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a really funny character there. And when I saw Randolph Carter in Salem was just a generic NPC, honestly, I was just very disappointed because he especially when in the story of Salem, he's clearly a very important character. He almost has a very similar position in a way to Shimosa's Muramasa, where he's like the much older guy that helps the main character, but isn't the playable character. I said the difference is that Shimosa's Muramasa was Shiro demi-servant, so we knew he was going to be playable eventually at some point. He was popular enough to warrant that, but Randolph Carter I mean, will he ever be playable?
I mean, Randolph Carter is supposed to be like an alter ego of actual
Lovecraft,
right?
yes.
So yeah, if he were a playable character, he'd be an alter ego. But
Or a foreigner.
Thing is, I thought of a foreigner, but if you're gonna make a foreigner, I'd rather you make H.P. Lovecraft the actual foreigner. You know? 'Cause
Yeah.
that's the actual writer.
Yeah, is that Randolph Carter sort of like it's more like it's more like a character he writes into his stories that is basically himself. And the thing about the Remnants as well is that a lot of the characters they use aren't bad per se. Like Moriarty, he's very fun in events, and we all know Shinjuku also had Jalter, who's very popular character. Woo! And Agartha, honestly, even Agartha had Columbus, who's basically like another Jack Horner in FGO. He's just like a complete asshole, and he just loves being a terrible person. Oh, yeah. It's fun. It's fun watching him be like evil, but he was just stuck in a bad chapter. Honestly, I just wish he was in a much better main story chapter moving forward.
I agree.
Yeah. And yeah, there's really not much to say. Shimosa, we cannot sing its praises enough. It's a brilliant chapter. Salem, it's not quite up there, but it's still a very solid chapter, I would say. And didn't overstay its welcome. And yeah, that's really about it. Moving on to the Lostbelt arc. Now, this one, I wasn't really sure if I should classify it, but this is the little prologue that was released at the end of the year. I wasn't sure, like I said, I wasn't sure if I wanted to include it originally, but then I thought, this is sort of like the Fuyuki, in a way. This is the...
Well, in terms of, importance, because it's mostly,
introducing the cryptors.
Yes, what's the word? Exposition.
Yeah, and exposition, yeah, it's introduced the...
So I would put it in C, because it doesn't really have much to offer, but the exposition is very important.
Honestly, I would rate this a bit higher than Fuyuki, in a way. I know it's kind of cheating, but I thought the stakes were pretty high, and I like the way it...
the story definitely changes.
And I like the way it really changed up the dynamic. Instead of being almost safe in Chaldea.
Okay, but we do have to talk about that running joke that we have with it, about how obviously it's a pseudonym.
Scandinavia Peperoncino, obviously a pseudonym. Now here's some people with actual real names, like David Semboyd and Beryl Gut. Yeah, sure, very realistic names. I believe you, FGO, don't worry. Even if no one else does, I believe you.
But, as the Lostbelts have kept coming out, you realize how important it was, that little introduction chapter to the crypto.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like this intro especially highlighted almost how we took Chaldea for granted, because the previous arc, we were clearly in like a very tense situation, but now we're in a situation where we have to leave Chaldea, when we're trapped in that very cramped, like, I call it the magic school bus, basically, but it's this very cramped, like, small vehicle, and even my room, you're basically staying in what looks like a closet.
I mean, most Japanese apartments like that.
And it's just, it's a very tense situation, it's a very different dynamic, and I really like how it really changed up the status quo. But, one thing I definitely think the chapter could have done better is, once again, the fake out deaths, because that FGO is no stranger to fake out deaths. Da Vinci and Camelot, and Jalter and Shinjuku. Remember when she almost died, but then she dived into the manhole to escape? Yeah, FGO does a lot of and MASH in the final singularity. FGO does a lot of fake out deaths.
They're basically going fairy tale on us.
Yeah,
the whole fight in the prologue, I remember it being so tedious because y'all gave me a heads up in advance when it came to Camelot, where in Camelot, Mash is the best servant to use because her skills are essentially just defense buffs, because all the fights are very difficult.
And now she has the Orthodox suit.
But during the prologue, I hated it because all of my max skills were essentially cut to level 6, and I was like, what the hell? All that grinding for nothing. Yeah. I was so devastated.
Yeah, and the Orthodox skills are just ass.
Yeah. I don't think the Orthodox is introduced in this chapter, but yes, the fact that this is essentially the chapter where, starting from this point on, Mash is no longer in her prime fighting state, so to speak, also adds to the desperation of the situation.
And you're forced to have her on your team.
That's another thing that, Shimosa forces you to have a weak Musashi in some very difficult fights, but ultimately, I guess it didn't really bother me that much, because at that point, they had a good like narrative purpose to it. And in all honesty, I know this is like a personal preference thing, but I think Musashi is just a better character than Mash in terms of just storytelling. Yeah, because that's something I want to talk about later, especially when we move to Lostbelt 6. But I think the biggest issue with FGO's story is pretty much the main character and Mash, because the main character is just a silent protagonist that's just a very basic main character personality. You know, if you look through the Fate series, we have guys like Shiro, who has a very interesting conflict with his desire to become a hero and the different conclusions he comes to in the different routes. We have Kiritsugu in Fate Zero, who's like also is another very tragic figure. I mean, honestly, even Sieg honestly doesn't really have much going on, but even he, you know, you can tell that he had a desire to live and has a more motivation, being a homunculus created for war, so and trying to find his purpose in life. But the main character just wants to live, and in honesty, is just not a very interesting dynamic. And then there's Mash, who I think Mash suffers from something I like to call the Paimon problem, where because the main character has to be silent, the main character, every time the main character, the writers want to make them talk, they just make Mash talk instead, and it just makes her like a very, like, it just affects both characters from a narrative perspective. They just both come across as very boring and just not having a lot of purpose. It's just...
It'd be nice if they stopped doing that, but
don't worry, they we'll get to that in Lostbelt 6, but yeah, long story short, the prologue chapter, pretty good, but I'd say a bit better than Fuyuki. And oh yeah, before I forget, the thing I mentioned about the fake out deaths is when they killed Da Vinci. You remember Kotomine literally punching a hole through Da Vinci, like donut style, and yeah, and I remember the whole scene was very tense. I was like, oh shit, maybe Da Vinci actually dies for real here. And then she just has a clone.
Yeah, and then we just get introduced to Loli Vinci.
Yeah, she has a clone, and and if I'm being honest, she doesn't have the same presence that the bigger Da Vinci had. It's just...
I mean, that's kind of the point.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I know it's the point, but it feels weird that why they would introduce it so soon after Da Vinci sacrificed herself. It's kind of like what I said earlier about Olga being killed off very early. It's not a bad idea, but I think they played their hand way too early.
Speaking of Olga, when you're running away because Gordo, right?
Gordolf, yeah.
Gordolf, sorry. When Gordolf keeps you locked in the room with Mash, as you're running away to essentially like escape Kalia because it's being invaded, over the intercom, I think it was, you hear Gordolf, just like act very scared that he wanted to just like prove his parents that he could do stuff. And that, when I heard it, or read it, sorry, it gave me a very nostalgic flashback to
Olga, yeah.
When she was about to
die. I think they make it a point in the story as well that Olga just wanted to be someone that wanted to be seen as a respectful authority figure by people, someone that people could rely on. But yeah, like I said, all that gets dumped basically at the end, like right as she's about to die. So
yeah, but you notice that's a common trope in the Fate series, that mages are very tragic figures as a sense, because they're always pressured by the previous generation, whether it's their parents or masters or whoever basically owns them, to just pass on the crest.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about passing it on to the next generation, making it even better, because they want to be the ones that are known throughout the whole history of mages and all that. So it stands to reason why these characters are like this, but it doesn't stop them from being, you know, like, good or bad. But it's pretty interesting how the Mage Society is in the whole Fates franchise.
Yeah. Alright, so Anastasia, where do we rank this?
B?
Yeah, I think that being in the first B is pretty good. It's definitely a pretty good introduction to the Lostbelt arc. Although, personally, here's something I think is an issue. Like, actually, no, I think the Lostbelt one technically does this better than the other Lostbelts, but I think the big issue is how the way they introduce the whole conflict of that you have to destroy the Lostbelt, and the main character finds out that he has to essentially kill everyone in the Lostbelt in order to make the original timeline survives. He just blanks out, like he's about to die, and Paxi takes the hit for him and does that big speech about that you have to essentially desire to live above all else, and that
it's basically telling the protagonist, that he has to start being selfish now. It's not like singularities where everything just fixed itself after he was in a minor interruption in the the plans of whoever tried to change it. Now it's literally genocide, or he's killing up a whole different branch of people that some people might write off, oh, they never existed.
I think this Lostbelt definitely did it a bit better than other Lostbelts. I'm kind of tempted to put this as a low A instead for that, but yeah, I think a high B is probably. I'll keep it there. It's just.
I mean, the problem is that, like, as good as that part that you mentioned might be, when it comes to the all-around experience, I still found some of the story a little too long. It was kind of unnecessary dialogue sometimes. Like, okay, I get it. But, it's not a terrible story. Like, the ending part is where it really starts getting more fun for me. But that's just me.
I think stuff like, for example, what was his name? Avisabron's conflict about how he remembers how he killed his own master in Fate Apocrypha to power the golem. And how, and how he feels ashamed about that and uses himself this time as a sacrifice. I think that part's pretty good. The only my only problem with that is that I think they what do I say? Yeah, that the fact that they're relying on something from Fate Apocrypha to act as a payoff in FGO, it's kind of weird because then someone that hasn't watched Apocrypha is just gonna find out about Avisabron's deal at the end. And personally, it wasn't really a problem at the time because the Fate Apocrypha anime had recently finished. So I just wish there was a bit more of that in better incorporated into the chapter. Also, I think Kadok is probably one of the better cryptors because just like his voice actor explained, he's basically the main character that failed to become the main character. He is the weakest cryptor, and he has a lot of very how would you say the
complex?
An inferiority complex about that. His Lostbelt, he was I remember he was told, I believe, that his Lostbelt was just supposed to be destroyed and whatever, and to just manage it as whatever's possible. But then he's like very determined to like prove himself and show that he is just as good as everyone else.
He's like a what could have been for the
protagonist. If the protagonist didn't have a whole group of people supporting them, he could have turned out similar to him. Yeah, and we see more of that, of course, in the Garden of Lost Will in Lostbelt 6.
Yes.
And how the main character also has an inferiority complex. But yeah, I think Kadok. So yeah, I think Kadok's definitely one of the better cryptors from writer perspective. Anything else you guys want to add?
No, we're good.
I'd say that's pretty good because the other characters were fine. I'd say Ivan the Terrible is pretty good, but not the best Lostbelt King.
But he is good as a servant, though.
Oh yeah, he's definitely good. Please use Ivan the Terrible. He's great.
And Salieri's scene was really good too.
Oh yeah, Salieri was also great. If anything, I'd say he's probably one of the better characters. Got an amazing character development as well. Especially how he also had inferiority complex towards like Mozart, and the fact that he was accused throughout his life that Mozart's dead. Obviously, this guy he must have had something to do with it. And eventually, how he starts playing, the Dies Irae on the piano, and the big speech that Mozart tells him, like just do as best as you can because everyone else sucks compared to me. Like that's something that,
imagine living in the same time as a person like that. That is insane. And Mozart is basically one of those once every 100-year type of geniuses, or something like that. Because we have had those type of people throughout like lifetimes, kind of like Da Vinci was for his time. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting concept. That's another reason why I like Salieri's interlude, because we actually get to explore a much more humane side to him. But the fact that without the vengeful aspect for Mozart, he basically can't exist as a servant. So that was actually pretty interesting.
And I think that's about it. I think we basically exhausted everything we can talk about in this chapter. Moving on. Götterdämmerung.
I'd say B as well, honestly.
Yeah, better than Anastasia or worse?
Slightly better than Anastasia.
All right, yeah. I'd say that honestly, I'd say that the first two Lostbelts are about on par with each other. Yeah, I would say that. It's this is where I think they start really hammering on that whole aspect of look at this little girl's gonna die. Don't you feel bad about it? And honestly, I feel like it's kind of unnecessary because we already went through this arc essentially in the first Lostbelt, and so them constantly trying to make us feel bad about the people living on it. It's not. I know it's something that the main character has to address all the time, but it's just that I feel like it gets very repetitive, especially since, in all honesty, like the little girl from Lostbelt 2, I don't know remember what her name was, but yeah, she just wasn't as interesting of a character as Paxi.
I think the reason why they do it is for scenes like the one in Lostbelt 6, which we'll talk about later on, but the point is to show how the protagonist slowly starts getting, or more like they're trying to fake out that he's getting desensitized and like he just doesn't care anymore, or he's just getting used to it, which is not the case as you find out later on. But it's noticeable that they have to constantly mention it because, you know, here you are, this character is basically always thought about he wasn't supposed to amount to anything, and all of a sudden he's in charge of basically restoring all of humanity by killing off a bunch of other people. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone. But you know, I get where you're coming from. You know, in our perspective as readers, yes, it gets very tedious because we get it. You know, this is gonna happen every time. But throughout the story in the other Lostbelts, you start to see the purpose. Or at least that's how I view it. But yeah, another scene that was really cool for me was when Sherlock gets basically wrecked. Like,
oh yeah, the beginning. Honestly, the beginning of this Lostbelt was pretty intense. Like, it just Sigurd instantly attacks you, and Sherlock's arm gets basically torn off, and yeah, it's a very intense scene.
One is that he was in danger. Like he was like, hey, I'm in danger. No, but really the Lostbelt story overall was pretty good. The Scotty was an interesting like villain, and you know.
Yeah, that she loved the people in her Lostbelt, but she was the whole dynamic that she had in the villages, it felt almost like Promised Neverland.
Yeah, I mean, if you notice, I think part of the reason why is, you know, after everyone that she knew has basically died, she's like, well, I guess this is what's left.
Yeah, she wants to like almost coddle humanity but at that point, they don't really grow. People don't really grow,
and she doesn't really view them as people. She just views them as something that to protect, but without actually affection.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. That she is very overprotective, but it causes this. It's the side effect is that humanity doesn't get to grow and learn, which is why everyone's stuck.
Overbearing parent.
Why everyone's stuck like as a teenager or child in there. It's to represent how regressed humanity is in that Lostbelt. And there are other characters, like I think Bryn finally gets a story chapter and is an interesting character. Yeah, and her dynamic with Sigurd is pretty funny. And what other characters appear here?
I mean, the Valkyries with the sister complex, but you know.
And Napoleon's honestly was pretty fun, especially how he immediately tries to propose to Ophelia.
That
was really weird.
Yeah.
Shitanai appears for a brief
Shitanai appears there. Honestly, I don't think she really does much. She has Hercules, which is, you know, the whole reference to Ilya and Hercules, but yeah, overall pretty good. I'd say the characters are about on par more or less with Lostbelt 1. Some great, some a bit lower than others, but generally pretty interesting. As far as like the main villain and like the main cryptor and their servant, I thought Ophelia was also pretty interesting. The fact that she was constantly like training, being used as a tool by her family, and so that's why she fell for Kristaria, because she felt like he was the only one that saw her for her, and
which we all knew wasn't the case.
Yeah. In a way, you could almost see it as like Kristaria was also using her, but
he was.
And then there was Surtur, who clearly was very attached to her, like to a very obsessive degree. Yeah. And Napoleon was pretty much the only person. If you notice, like Napoleon was pretty much the only person that actually liked Ophelia for her, even though like he's very goofy about it.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say that Kristaria. It's not like he didn't care for Ophelia, but at some point he was always very ambitious and was always focused on getting to the results he wanted.
Yeah, what you're saying is that he always saw the bigger picture.
Yeah, but it was always about him, even though he did care about his
the fellow cryptors.
Yeah, but he never stopped to think about using them for his own needs. You know, he never. Yeah. He always it didn't matter. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Overall, pretty good story chapter. And now we move on to Lostbelt 3.
I
Now,
would put that at like high C, like above the story chapter, because honestly, you can't really put it in B because it's way too short. There's barely anything. To talk
yeah,
about.
honestly,
It's a C plus.
yeah, honestly, I'm like divided if it should be a C or a B, but honestly, I'm gonna keep it at a high C here because the thing about Lostbelt 3 is that, okay, here's my biggest issue with Lostbelt 3. Remember the prologue where we end up in the Wandering Sea, and I think that the Lostbelt arc lost a lot of its intensity in that end because previously we were on the Magic School Bus and we're traveling from Lostbelt to Lostbelt. It was a very tense situation, but then we end up in basically Chaldea 2, and I get that the next few Lostbelts are much stronger and the main characters need all the help they can get, but I don't know. Once again, I feel like they could have played this out a bit more slowly, wait a bit longer. It's just could have done a better job at introducing this because we lost the intensity of and like the desperation we had being in that.
I mean, I get what you're going for, but thing is that they have just kept that going throughout the whole Lostbelt at some point.
Oh yeah. I know. It, like obviously, it would have worn itself out long before we reached the end because we still haven't reached the end. But
my big issue with the reason why they went to Lostbelt 3 in the first place was because of a stupid reason.
Yeah. You can tell that the first two Lostbelts are very intense and like have a very grim atmosphere, but Lostbelt 3 is a lot more. Has a lot more of goofy nature to it.
Even the fight against the Emperor was kind of dumb because at the end of the day he was just there. You know, it's not that he was hard.
Because
just that.
The thing about the Lostbelt King in this Lostbelt 3, he ends up betraying his own Lostbelt. I think he's the only Lostbelt King to do that. So even up to now, because
not to mention the Cryptor, which was technically a servant where
you may Ren, yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, there wasn't really any stakes there. She was just there for her fellow,
Yeah. Also, hot take. I think she's the least interesting Cryptor.
Because she was never a Cryptor. That's just it. She was just she was just there.
Think about the other Cryptors, and honestly, I think maybe the least interesting Cryptor's probably maybe Beryl, who's like just an evil dude, but Yume Ren's like maybe above him, I would say.
Yeah.
I wasn't really a big fan of the fight afterwards, like the conclusion of it. He essentially, like, out of all the times he could have like gone to stop you, at the end is when he just decides, okay, and like makes a body.
No,
I was disappointed though that Jinkei just died really quickly. It was like
but Jinkei finally got to have her chance to kill the Emperor.
Yeah, but she died before she could do it though. Again.
For a second.
Yeah, but this time she was way more successful than the previous time.
I mean, the first time she got close to him, she's just...
but this time she had the cell phone. Remember? Yeah, even the way she, like, tries to kill him, it's, like, by sending them, like, a spam mail through the phone. Yeah. And, honestly, Lostbelt 3, honestly, I think it had, like, lesser characters. Honestly, like, you know how every Lostbelt has, like, a human companion that makes us feel bad for the people on the Lostbelt? I don't think Lostbelt 3 even has, like, a named human companion, because I know the little girl, I think her name was like Gerda from Lostbelt 2. Mm-hmm. The Lostbelt 3 has like a few like farmers, but not.
The wolf kind of helps you out.
Yeah, Paxie's from Lostbelt 1. Lostbelt 2 had Greta, and Lostbelt 3 has like these unnamed farmers.
But it's because if you notice, the humans there are just completely desensitized. They're so dependent on Xing for everything that at that point they don't really need anything.
Yeah. You can tell that it felt to me like they weren't even trying to make a more.
If you notice, there weren't any outsiders. That's the big difference here. In the first one, Paxi is technically a type of outsider because he lives by himself. He's not completely.
He lived with his mom. Remember, his mom got killed by the other guy.
Yeah, but what I mean is that he's not completely like.
Yeah, he's not on board with his own Lostbelt.
Yeah, and in the second one, the little girl was trying to constantly rebel against, but not in a childish way. You know, she wanted to explore. She wanted to. Even at the end, the way she dies, she was basically outside when everyone was supposed to. Yeah,
where at Lostbelt 3, the humans, they don't become inspired and desire heroes until Spartacus sacrifices himself. Remember? Yeah, when the Emperor tries to destroy the village, and then Spartacus does the whole Iron Giant scene where he like flies up to the air and like explodes.
Yeah, that's another thing that I've liked about Lostbelt is that they're actually redeeming characters that were barely shown.
Yeah.
And in the singularities.
Yeah, even Spartacus. Not only was he barely shown in Septem when he first appeared, but he didn't really get much to do in Apocrypha. He was just a crazy dude.
It's just a bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Spartacus is definitely a lot more interesting here. I think Mordred also appears, but this is definitely not one of her more interesting appearances. She doesn't really get to do much. But yeah, overall, I'd say we covered just about everything we could about this place. It's not terrible, but not impressive. Now, Lostbelt 4. A tier? Whoa, wow. Where would we put this though?
Honestly,
I would say better than Solomon. Honestly, I think
yes,
better than Salem too.
For sure.
What about Babylon?
Let's see. I think it could stay. That's a little hard, honestly, because.
Yeah. Okay. Let's think about it first. Let's analyze it first, and then.
Okay, so if we're talking about difficulty and challenges, I would say Babylon was harder because we have way less servants, and the fights against the
Lokapala.
Yeah,
the normal enemies of Lostbelt 4 are very difficult.
So freaking hard. No. I mean in Babylon though.
In Babylon, the Lamu are also very great, crazy.
The Lamu are annoying as fuck to fight, honestly.
It really was.
But obviously, if we're comparing it because of the time they got released, yes, that was the first one is a lot difficult. But overall, Lostbelt 4 was pretty challenging. The fight against Doman was very annoying.
No, Doman and Godjuna.
Yeah, exactly.
I had to use Kama for that. I think I still have a video on my channel when I was streaming Lostbelt 4, and holy shit, I died so many times against those guys.
How many times did you hear Arjuna's no phantasm?
Yeah, I never want to hear Mahapralaya for the rest of my life.
No, but okay, so
okay, once again, there's a little girl. This time I genuinely don't remember. Yeah, with the pet dog. No, honestly, the pet dog dying is the saddest thing of any Lostbelt, alright? Yes. That's the saddest. And the fact that she didn't even remember it. Like, not only did they kill the dog, they...
already a JoJo's reference from the start.
yeah.
I was thinking more of Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah, a little girl and a dog. Yeah, obviously, we're gonna think about FMA at that, but... yeah, but at least the little girl and the dog had a much happier ending here than the ones in FMA. In a very messed up way, but yeah. I remember when we start the Lostbelt with like Rama and Karna, and they're talking about how we're so powerful, like we can't actually lose, right?
No one knows.
Clearly, Rama hasn't watched like enough anime to know that if you celebrate too early, things are gonna bite you back in the
death. Like
like how Karna had to sacrifice himself. Like, it is another fake out death.
Yep.
Yeah, where Karna's to sacrifice himself to save us from Godjuna basically nuking the whole city, like the whole Lostbelt. I mean, but yeah.
I feel like it's
yeah. I honestly think I like another reason I rate this chapter definitely higher than the other 3 is because I think the characters here are actually done much better because we got
Peperoncino.
Pepe. Pepe is easily like peak Cryptor.
Oh, yeah.
He's peak, actual peak. We'll talk more about him in Lostbelt 6, definitely, but yeah, he's definitely one of the more entertaining guys. Like, it's pretty crazy how he comes to us for help because he lost control of Godjuna, and he's like, save me!
Pretty much.
And I just like that at the end he's like, okay, so you didn't think I wouldn't fight you, right?
And we fight him and Ashvathaman when the proper Cryptor v Master fight.
Oh yeah, and that's just also a really cool character as a whole. Like, I actually think he's pretty fun as a servant to use. Well, I don't use him that much because honestly, I have other archers that I.
Yeah, and also he's single target.
I mean, so Orion technically is more of a solo single target kind of servant. But you know what I mean. Like, he's still pretty fun to use. His animations are really good too. But yeah, overall, the fact that Pepe was in that chapter just makes it.
Yeah, and then there's also Lakshmi Bai, or I like to call her Indian Jalter.
Yeah.
Honestly, I almost feel bad that she is really bad at gameplay and that she's not very popular because if you think about it, she's basically just like a goofball that has really bad luck. Like, she's not a bad character at all. She's just especially when standing in front of the chariot, attracting all the attacks to her because of her bad luck. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool moment. Yeah, I think Lakshmi Bai, I think her being a saber face is probably one of the few saber faces where being a saber face negatively affects her popularity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I wish she was just better in gameplay, but I guess that's just her being.
Well, maybe she'll get a rank up quest at some point.
Yeah, hopefully.
Are we also introduced to Ganesha in this singularity?
Oh yeah, Ganesha. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I almost forgot
It's the other moon cancer that's out.
No, yeah,
but like it is so.
Yeah, because Ganesha is very like he's a very goofy character, but
and she has one of the most important roles.
Yeah, she has a very important role, and she like almost loses her mind waiting for that in the scene where you're opening the big box to let her out of the fun box. Yeah, and she was waiting for you for like a more billion years. Oh yeah, wow, with the very emotional music playing. It's like, okay, now I don't feel bad about getting pity broken by her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, you know. It was
Yeah, I didn't play
story.
Fate Extra C3, so I don't really know much about Jinako's character. Yeah, so who knows? Maybe when Fate Extra C3 gets translated, I'll be able to play through it and get the full context of their relationship. But yeah. Overall, pretty cool chapter. Not much else to say. It was, yeah, Gajuna was not one of the more interesting Lostbelt Kings, but he...
there was a 3-star archer.
Yo,
also.
William Tell, yeah.
I liked his.
He had a cool
introduction.
moment.
Yeah, like when he was distracting Gajuna, like shooting at him, and yeah, oh wow, I remember that was pretty intense. I remember reading on that.
Like a certain dialogue he had specifically is like, if you miss the first shot, you always carry a second one with you, and like
Yeah.
after like realizing what happened during that dialogue, I grew.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I always love how every time I see, you know, like we're 2 years behind JP, right? So we're constantly exposed to characters that we're gonna have to wait at least 2 years to get.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you only see the designs or just the gameplay overall, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh wow, that servant looks horrible or it sucks, kind of like Oberon. And then when you actually play through the story and you really get to see how these characters are, I'm like, oh shit, now I really like the character and I want to pull for them.
Yeah. I think the story really does big work and carrying a lot of servants, as it should, because I think a lot of gacha games really need to show off the characters in the story to make you really want them, you know, aside from the gameplay function they serve.
Do properly in the first singularity.
Yeah, that's the big problem with the singularities. They, like we already covered, that they were just characters were just thrown in because they were just advertising them part of the game rather than actually because they added something to the story. But here it actually feels like they add something to the story. Like something I mentioned in Lostbelt, didn't mention in Lostbelt 1 is how, well, I sort of mentioned it, but it's that Lostbelt 1 has a lot of characters from Fate Apocrypha, and the anime, you know, was going on at the time in JP when it was released. But even 2 years later, the characters feel natural. They don't feel out of place. I'd say the only weird one is just Visebron's character development is clearly meant to be a continuation of his arc from Apocrypha, which, like I said, it's kind of weird that they're using a different medium to continue a character arc here. But yeah, overall, they do a pretty good job at the characters in the Lostbelt arc. Now, the one and only Atlantis. Now,
that's the EX.
It's not
EX.
Now, it's not a question of whether or not this is EX, because obviously this has to be EX. It's like, where in EX? Is this better than Shimosa, better than Camelot? Where would we put this?
For me, I would put it best better than the other two because.
Yeah. Oh wow, really? Damn. Okay, sure. Oh, okay. Like, let's hear it.
Okay, here's the thing. I can't remember playing through any other previous chapters being as hyped as I was at the final moments of Atlantis. Like when I was reading everything from the part where you see Hector coming out, it was like when I saw Hector, I was like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, they made up a year 1 3-star appearing is one of the most hype moments of this story chapter. What the
music. Then we have Madrigaldo, which is best boy, honestly, and then he gets to use Durand.
Fucking Manrico, dude. That's what I keep saying. When you keep saying, like, when you see these characters, like 2 years before we get the story chapter, we're like, dude, what the fuck? This looks terrible. This guy looks like shit, or looks lame. But then you actually play through the story, and Man Ricardo is the biggest bro of the entire garden.
I loved it because also another thing that I enjoyed that Man Ricardo did, he after Hector got summoned, you see him like stand in awe that his hero is in front of him.
Yes.
And then the moment like Hector's about to like fade away, he asks, "Can I use your sword?" And then he's like, "Yeah, go ahead." And we get to see him use Durandal. I got so excited
doing
for
that.
I was like, I remember being like so freaking excited. I was, oh my god. And obviously that whole scene with Super Orion and Artemis shooting the that was
Oh yeah!
epic.
Oh my God, Chad Orion. I remember. No, speaking of characters that we see 2 years ago, I remember the first time we saw him. We're like, "Yo, this is what Orion like. His actual body looks like, dude. I understand Artemis now.
Yeah.
Like that dude looks like a freaking titan. Like holy shit, he's like tough as fuck. But then we actually see him in the story, and he's still like very goofy and very silly. But he's still obviously he's very strong.
The one thing I love about Chad Orion is during certain dialogues you'll see that his face from normal it just goes back to the bear.
Yeah, but honestly, from the beginning, this is probably the most intense Lostbelt we've had, because from the beginning, Odysseus is trying to kill us from the word go. Like, he sicks an entire armada on us. We have to fight the 3-headed dog. The whole thing is going crazy, and I think, remember in the beginning as well, when he's, like, killing the servants from proper human history, and he decapitates Deon, and we see that, the blood splurting animation. It's like, okay, you know this one's gonna be different.
Oh, another thing, it's one of the one chapter that made me actually like Jason.
Oh yeah, dude.
Right.
Because Jason was just kind of a pathetic asshole in the beginning. Because like I like characters that are like unapologetically terrible people, like Jack Horner or Maeve or Columbus. But Jason was honestly just very pathetic. He was just a very lame villain.
It's just like the douche boyfriend, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. He's just like an asshole boyfriend to Medea Lily, and when she betrays him, you're like, I mean, okay, it took you long enough,
Right.
but Jason actually appears here, and he's like a legitimately good character.
He feels like an actual hero.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
remember when Canis was shit talking Hercules, and he actually stands up and is like, you could say whatever you want about me, but Hercules is like his
like his bro.
his bro. Like you get the feeling that Jason, as much of a terrible human being he genuinely cared about Hercules.
Before the island even blew up, because y'all had to leave, because Artemis was already like planning to blow up the island from like the start. The moment you see a Drake say, "Take my ship, it's all yours," he turns it into the Argo, and
Yeah,
it does not get better than that, man. And
That
you
should
become
be-
one of the Argonauts, and I'm like, oh! I feel like Jason redeemed himself from like
Oh,
the
for
Lost
sure.
Belt.
Yeah,
That was
now, dude,
beautifully.
there's so many characters here. We haven't even talked about Charlotte Corday.
Oh,
Her whole character arc, how she was basically the double agent summoned by Odysseus,
Yeah.
and all that, and had like the weird like clithophronomia thing on her. Yeah,
No, honestly, yeah, that's
yeah.
It's probably one of the best.
Yeah, we could honestly just make a whole video just talking about how amazing Atlantis is. But yeah, overall, like if any Lostbelt chapter, if we could choose just one Lostbelt chapter to have an anime, I would pick Atlantis, 100%.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Atlantis would be like a really good anime to
I would love to see all those things like Chatterine, the friggin' man Ricardo using the.
Oh yeah,
Is it-
Chatterine using his noble phantasm to shoot like Artemis from the
And
from
see
space.
the Argonaut animated, actually drawn.
Yeah, yeah.
seeing like
the Argo.
seeing Jason take over like Drake's ship, turning it into the the
Oh.
Argo with his noble phantasm.
Yeah.
That would be very well.
It would just be hype as fuck.
It would.
Oh yeah, no, this
just
whole
seeing the animation of it happening is just like.
no, Atlantis
wow.
is just amazing. Now, actually, I don't remember. I think there was one human companion in this last spell that he was gonna die because they were gonna blow him up, but everyone thought, oh god, we're actually gonna die because of the gods. Like, oh my god, like, we're blessed and everything. But then towards the end, the guy like starts thinking about, wow, maybe dying doesn't sound so cool, but then he just gets blown up, and it's like, yeah, I feel like that's probably the weakest aspect of this Lost Belt. But honestly, overall, like,
Actually, it makes sense because if you notice in this chapter, it was never about the humans of that society, or at least not in this specific sub-chapter. It was all about the servants trying to eliminate the whole Lost Belt as a whole. Remember that the servants that were summoned to destroy it first?
oh yeah. We'll talk about that more in Olympus, because
Yes.
Olympus
Yes.
definitely goes more into that. And where would we put Olympus?
Right after it, I would suggest. I would say right after Atlantis. 'Cause
Like you mean on the left, like the best story chapter?
Like slightly less because
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
because the
Fair.
Olympus was great, but I feel like I had way more fun with Atlantis because it felt more dire because the stakes were just high already. Olympus just picked up where Atlantis left off.
Yeah. It felt more like a great but not as intense part 2 to the saga. And yeah, something I didn't mention about Lostbelt 1, but we see Musashi again there, and Musashi helps us defeat Ivan the Terrible. And then here, Musashi appears again, and she's a much bigger role here than previously. And us helping us fight the Talos, the giant Talos guy.
And then this is a chapter where Mash actually does something, for fuck's sake. And
oh yeah, the Black Barrel. Yes, finally, Mash gets something to do other than have the shitty Orthonax. Although, gotta keep in mind that Olympus forcing us to use the very terrible Mash Orthonax was shit.
Oh yeah, but
again, I know that Shimosa forced us to use an underleveled Musashi, but I'll keep insisting that Musashi is a better character than Mash at least. Yes. He's a more likable character.
But the thing is, though, that chapter also introduced some of the harder fights.
I think Olympus was when the difficulty spiked up a notch. Like Camelot was the big turning point, but this is really where it's solidified that okay, if you don't have the latest highest leveled servant at this point, you're done. You're out of here.
Oh yeah.
Especially that you're, like I said, the game forces you to use like support Musashi, support Romulus, so you don't have access to a lot of your support party the whole time. You also forces you to use Kindness, I think in the Demeter fight.
Yeah. It's like one of the servers that you are forced to use. So like half the strats you could use to fight Demeter, it just goes out the window. And so the game forces you to like.
I had to restart that fight multiple times until I really got something right, but it took way too long. When the Memorial Quest came out recently, I had an easier time, but you know.
Yeah, I just used Summer Murasaki, honestly.
I used Ozzy for both that one and against Kristaria, and it was pretty fun.
Oh yeah. We have to talk about. I think we have to talk about like Kristaria. I think definitely. When he's introduced, I honestly get the feeling he's kind of like a very pompous type of villain who considers himself higher than everything. But then when you actually see him in
that was just the persona he was putting on. It was just a fake image because even though he does think himself better because of all he's had to struggle and everything.
Yeah, but we see his backstory here, and he really had to suffer a lot. You know.
Yeah. It just says that he's not perfect. He had to struggle a lot from the beginning, and how do I say this? It's like he suffered the whole setback of when you're a genius in a world where everyone just like believes that you shouldn't even be here kind of type.
Yeah.
Like how they can't really appreciate it because they just compare themselves to you and they think you're better off.
And honestly, even Kindness had a pretty good dynamic here with Kristaria, because previously I just think that when you see Kindness for the first time, during the first Lostbelt, I believe. She's just sort of like this very like a very constantly angry acts like an asshole because that's how she wants to be, considering what Poseidon did to her, which we will not mention because I don't want to be struck down by God YouTube.
Yeah, that's what the skill is for.
Poseidon's essence. Oh yeah, no, when those who know.
Oh god, that's so messed up. Oh yeah, kind of like how Anastasia's ascension materials are bullets.
Yeah, Anastasia's materials are being bullets is also very messed up, but the Olympian gods were very intense. I mean, even Zeus,
Zeus was an interesting fight because the whole concept of the having to switch between body parts.
and how Zeus essentially came to respect Kristaria after basically losing to him in a fight, I believe. Yeah, Zeus actually lost to a fight of Kristaria. I mean, we already fought Kristaria in Atlantis, so we knew how strong he was.
The thing is that Kristaria was as strong as in that Lostbelt, because that's where he could actually use his own type of magic, mage art, whatever.
His own abilities.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only place where he could actually use it to its maximum, because outside that, his mage abilities weren't that they were limited, basically.
Yeah.
So, if I remember correctly, during the story that Kristaria is essentially... During the backstory that they give for Kristaria, I think it was his own family that poisoned the dagger and tried to kill him. And even though he got cut, but still managed to live, the poison, completely destroyed
his circuits.
Yeah.
Even though this dude has, almost no magical circuits in him, he is still OP. He mollywopped Zeus, man. That's not something you can say lightly.
And he got to summon 3 servants, not just one.
Yeah.
I still love that he bullied Dioscuri.
Yeah, and the Dioscuri also.
I loved that he bullied Dioscuri. Personally, he deserved it.
To be fair, Dioscuri are just a pair of dumb siblings, honestly.
Because when you meet them in Atlantis, they're like they think very high and mighty of themselves and see everyone is beneath them. And then you actually fight them and you see that they essentially lost their divinity because of human belief, and because of that they resent humanity.
Technically, only Castor is the one that lost.
Yeah.
Pollux was still divine, but the reason why Castor hated humanity so much is because of them that he lost divinity in another legend.
Yeah.
They were originally supposed to be both divine.
Yeah, exactly. That was a very interesting. I actually did not know that they were supposed to be divine originally. I already know about Pollux and Castor because of Persona 3.
Yeah.
Remember? But yeah, this is very interesting to see like the Gemini twins in action. And, like the Olympian gods were also very intense. Like seeing like the first time Aphrodite appeared.
Hephaestus
Crazy.
was also pretty cool. I don't remember if that was in Atlantis or
That was
in Olympus.
It's
yeah.
Olympus because
Yeah, I remember
that's
Olympus is also where they revealed that the hands,
Yeah.
the EXP hands were from Prometheus, I believe.
right. Yeah,
Hephaestus.
Hephaestus mentioned that, and then like it's like a moment of silence, and like Mash says, "Are those hands?"
Yeah.
We fight
Yeah,
those.
so even the EXP cards are canon. I mean, we should have seen it coming considering Solomon confirmed that all the events are canon, but it's still crazy that years later they gave a actual explanation for where all those weird things come from. And remember when Chaos appeared on Musashi's last stand?
Oh my god.
That was insane.
Even the fight against Canis at the end was pretty cool.
Because Canis technically she already lost Kristaria, basically lost any purpose of fighting you, but she wanted to just fight you one last time.
Yeah, she wants to go like a warrior. Basically.
Exactly. It was a very great scene. There was just so many great scenes. Oh, we haven't even talked about like Macarios and Adele, which in my opinion are probably one of the better human companions as well, because they were part of like the god destroying alliance. And
because Europa really wanted to stop Zeus from continuing.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, I actually just remembered that how Europa was actually
relevant. Yeah, no, it's funny. Oh yeah, like when she was how Chatterine was released without Europa in the banner.
Yeah, because she was supposed to be released alongside Chatterine, but then in the NA version they released Chatterine by himself, which honestly was for the best because people like Chatterine a lot more. But
and the memes were hilarious.
Yeah, and it was I was like, do you think we forgot something? And she's like standing out in the rain because like no one gives a shit about Europa. But they, like I said, they actually gave Europa a lot of like plot relevance here. And I think this is also the chapter where, like, remember when Beryl appears and and when Morgan, Morgan uses Rongo Bongo by destroying the tree from Lostbelt 6.
Yeah, because Beryl says, "I'm right here, Morgan," and then like Morgan immediately fires.
And we're like, what the fuck? I remember reading that part thinking, what the fuck did Beryl do to piss off Morgan? And then after reading Lostbelt 6, I'm like, what didn't Beryl do to piss off Morgan? What didn't Beryl?
Something also related to Kristaria. The second time you fight him, the whole dialogue of him trying to tell oh my god, he has like a one-on-one talk with the main character.
Yeah.
And like the way he explains it on like why he wants to fight him so much, I personally enjoyed it because if I'm correct, he's trying to say, ignore everything right now. It's just you and me. Our ideals versus another. And so by reading that certain dialogue, I did not want to punch Kristaria after that. I wanted my main boy to live. I got so attached to him.
Yeah, that's how you know it's good writing.
Yeah.
Like,
When they actually get a guy who looked like a total asshole and actually make him a genuinely great character.
He did all that to essentially like help you out.
Yeah. But overall, I think we already exhausted Olympus and Atlantis. Easily the two of the best story chapters in FGO. And when we have Heian-kyo, I believe, honestly, I would put this at a high B. What do you think?
I was thinking A, honestly.
A, okay.
But putting it right below the Lostbelt 4. Because obviously it's better than Salem. But, you know, like...
really? Okay.
I mean,
you know what? Yeah. Honestly, yeah. I actually really like this one, but
it's short, but it's to the point at the same time, you know? And it introduces old characters, but it's also a way to view older characters in a different light. Like,
Yeah,
Kintoki
yeah.
gets more serious.
oh yeah, this is really Kintoki's story chapter and his
And
journey.
The fights overall were decent, not super, difficult or anything like that. But it was a good chapter nonetheless.
Yeah, I think Heian Kyo is definitely more of a low key chapter after the intensity that was Olympus. It's meant to be sort of like a good bridge between this and Lostbelt 6.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say about it, honestly. I just think it's.
Yeah, I
to
think.
get an A,
What I say, Mono?
The last boss fight, which is you fighting Domon, I like the mechanic behind it because
Yeah, because you
during
attack
one
with
of
the
the
fire cards. Yeah.
because a lot of people would automatically start engraving cards with certain
The command codes.
with certain command codes, and so just knowing that Domon's whole boss fight is essentially okay. You attack me with a command code card, you receive like a debuff if I'm correct, or like you take damage for it. I laughed. Because none of my servants have any command codes on them.
I think the only servant I have with command codes is just Raiko because I just wanted to finally give her something.
In my case, I only have a few servants, such as Aki Protea has one, but those are the ones that I put after I watched a challenge quiz video for her. Chatterine obviously has some of the best ones, and the other one was Yango Fei, because it's just perfect.
Yeah, so something I wanted to mention about this Heian Kyo is that this is like the end of a trilogy. Because the trilogy, the way I see it, is that it starts with Shimosa, and then it's Olympus as the second chapter, and then the third and final chapter of the, what I call like the Shimosa mini arc is Heian Kyo, which is essentially the whole story. Yeah, exactly.
Real.
Yeah, Domon appears in Olympus as well, and
that's where they take out all his other lives.
Yeah.
Dottore.
Like Dottore from Genshin Impact. Yeah,
If I'm correct, I think it was Pepe using one of his.
His arcs.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
another reason why it was good. Pepe was there again.
Yeah.
Albro.
Yeah, and but yeah, Heian Kyo was very interesting chapter. It's cool seeing all these Japanese servants again after Shimosa, because Raiko didn't really get to do much as in Shimosa. She and Shuten were mostly just the boss fight.
If anything, it's the closest thing to an Onigashima.
Yeah, because I remember the Onigashima event. I really, I have a lot of love for that event. So seeing Heian Kyo as a pseudo sequel to that event, I really liked it. And yeah, and how it was basically, if you notice, like the whole concept of the story was that it was essentially a Grail war where everyone was summoning a caster, but Kintoki's servant was never really properly revealed. It's sort of implied that it's the main character, but we're never giving a definitive answer. And in all honesty, I don't think it really matters, because the point is that how Kintoki saw the main character, and they had a good bond throughout that. Yeah. Gold. Yeah, even when you finish a chapter, it says golden finish. Yeah.
I completely forgot that in Olympus he used. Oh my god, he summoned the golden bear. Oh god.
Oh yeah, and he summons the golden bear, and he summons the golden bear here too against Domon.
It was beautiful.
Yeah. So Heian Kyo.
And we also have Suna, which is
Suna, and I believe his servant was Medea Lily.
Yeah, which was funny. But...
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting seeing all these other old servants. Like Babash was Murasaki's servant. Nursery Rhyme was Raiko's servant. She had a new look and everything. Yeah, I'd say one of the issues I would say is that there's still some characters that don't really get to shine much. Like Kagekiyo, I remember seeing like she's like the much older Ushiwakamaru, but like not really. But she's just really a cool boss fight in this. She doesn't really get to do much. It's not really, even if anything, it's not really until the end of the boss fight.
Ibuki is barely there.
Yeah, Ibuki just shows up, kicks ass, and then gets eaten by Domon. And then the thing is that I kind of understand why, because because Domon thought that he killed her, but turns out she never died. In fact, she just gives Kintoki her sword like nothing. She's just watching. Like the way I see it, she just let Domon eat her because she's just like,
she's literally a god.
She's like, they even say she's on the level of Zeus, so she's just like, okay, like I'll play along. Let's see where you're going with this.
Basically, yeah. Just like the typical.
Yeah, but then when she sees that, like, that the golden bear appears and everything, she's like, dude, take this, it'll be funny. And she gives him the Kusanagi no Tachi.
Yes. So overall, I would think that's pretty good. It kind of sucks that we never got to see Abe no Seme, though.
Because the way Doman was basically doing everything in the chapter to get Seime's attention, but Seimei the whole time was like, basically like, I'm not gonna show up. If anything, I'm gonna humiliate you. I'm gonna prove that even these random assholes from God knows where can kick your ass. And yeah, it's definitely I would say, considering like what I explained earlier, the Shimosa trilogy is probably the weakest entry, but still a very solid entry overall.
Yeah.
And now, last but not least, is Lostbelt 6.
Top EX.
Avalon Lefay. Where? At the very top?
Yeah, because even though
lower than Atlantis, what do you
love
think?
Atlantis, I know that in terms of storytelling, The Lostbelt 6 did it really well.
Oh my god. So, where do we even fucking begin with Lostbelt 6? Holy shit. Just from the start, like, going back to what I said earlier, MASH and the main character, easily the two worst characters in the story. In fact, the story chapters that don't have MASH, like Heian Kyo and Shimosa, are some of the best chapters because she's not in it.
I mean, I would argue that this one she does get redeemed.
But Lostbelt 6 completely redeems MASH. It's like, oh my god, she feels like an actual, genuine character now.
Yeah, she got more fleshed out.
Like I think that's what I said. Separate, like how I felt like the Paimon problem, where the main character has like the basically it has
can't be apart from Paimon.
Can't be apart from each other.
She's no longer a buster servant. We got her old skills back.
Like Tamlin Galahad.
When I saw that part, I was like, oh yeah, now it's
separating MASH and the main character and having both their stories happen in parallel was easily the best storytelling decision, not just of this Lostbelt, but probably of any story chapter in FGO.
Because it gave space for MASH to actually grow into her own self. She wasn't no longer just the servant from Chaldea. She was no longer the master's servant. She was her own person. She had to actually find a way, struggle, and get to know these characters from this Lostbelt without even knowing what was her mission, because she had amnesia throughout most of the beginning.
When Bogart also.
Her
husband Bogart, and how
she just knocked him out.
She knocks him out. Yeah.
Everything's about to happen. Nope.
I kind of want to see that in anime.
That's a very good. That's a very good argument for why Lostbelt 6 needs to be animated.
But MASH was just top, and then the final fight against the hand of Kronos and the first part of the
honestly, we didn't even get to the other things, like how how Bogart was actually, like, you actually honestly kind of feel bad for him at the end, because he just wanted to help everyone, but he basically
and
the way he used the black barrel and he caused a lot of that collateral damage. He was really eating away at him.
Very power hungry with the moment he had access to the black barrel.
It was more inferiority complex, really. He just always wanted to be the savior. He wanted to be recognized by Morgan.
Honestly, when it comes to when the Lostbelts focus on like citizens, the normal citizens of Lostbelt, I think Lostbelt 6 has probably the best cast. Lostbelt 6 could have basically been its own video game by itself.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. It would have been amazing. And if anything, it's actually
the goblins.
Yeah, when I saw the goblins appear when MASH knocks out, I was like, oh no, Jesus, don't tell me, please don't go there. But thankfully they didn't go there. But that's.
I even felt bad for them when they left, when they stayed behind. I was like,
when they stayed behind and got killed. Honestly, even the goblins were actually great characters.
Going back to Bogart, when he had the black barrel, I am very surprised, because if I'm correct, that's supposed to like poison you if you're not.
Yeah, he was getting poisoned by it.
Yeah, but like he didn't die from it
because he's still fairy though. Like
the fairies are very, very strong. Did you not
remember how fucking Woodwose was still alive after all that shit?
Yeah, Woodwose basically took so much punishment, and the motherfucker was still somehow alive. Now, speaking of fake out deaths in FGO, that's another one that to the count. Woodwose.
Yeah, no, that guy just kept coming back like a fucking plague. And then there's fucking Barrel. It's the same thing. Barrel.
I don't know if we're skipping over. I think we're skipping over.
We're just going back and forth.
No, honestly, we're just mentioning the things we liked.
one of the best early fights you get to see, hands down for me at like the start. Tristan holding off Vargas.
Oh yeah.
No, oh my
loved
god,
it.
that's a great scene. Like Tristan randomly appears at the beginning, and like
Just summon him
very
with,
he just shows up uninvited. But then him holding off Vargas, that was a very intense moment, and the way he
Yes. For sure.
and the way he like ties her down to the castle, saying like those humans that you look down on, their achievements are what's holding you in place. And it's like, oh my god,
It's like draw them up.
like the mic drop moment. That's insane. And like honestly, look, when the Lostbelt characters were revealed, you know, Morgan and Vargas and Melusine and Bavanshi, we still wanted them, those
Yes.
characters. But then now actually seeing them in the story makes you want them even
Honestly,
more.
I think I literally got every single Lostbelt 6 character because they were all too good to.
Yeah, I think the only one I'm missing. Yeah,
I failed
the
to
only one I'm
finish
missing
full.
myself is Bavanshi because she just doesn't want to show up. I'm gonna have
and technically, Melusine.
Melusine, but yeah, I know Melusine's has a rate up in December, so I'm not too worried about her. If anything, I'm more worried about Bavanshi because I know, yeah, because she's story locked, and I know for a fact I'm not pulling in. What's her next banner? Britomar? No, no one cares about that servant.
Okay, people do, but it's not for the right reason.
Yeah.
Well, you know, like, no, but I mean, you can still choose her as a free 4-star as a backup anyway. So you got.
Yeah, you got that.
Yeah, she's always like a backup option
Yeah.
for like the free 4-star.
Honestly,
Excluding the free,
honestly, I
I'm
think
annoyed that they stopped doing that though. Honestly.
no, they're gonna do another in May, I believe.
Really?
Yes, May of next year.
Well, let's hope so.
So right before Cream Hill and Don Quixote appear.
Oh, no, so if we didn't get Don Quixote there, we can get him there.
No, Don Quixote appears after the free 4-star ticket.
What the fuck? No, damn.
Yeah,
I
guys.
feel like for the 4-star ticket though, because people have like, well, when I was looking through the internet, I have seen like posts of like you being able to use your free 4-star ticket to pull out the free 4-star pretender. I forgot her
she
name.
was there. Yeah,
Yeah, so I don't know if
I
she
forgot
comes
her name.
out like this year or if it's like
the next year at the beginning of the year.
yeah.
Case Falls rerun.
Oh yeah. I'm
But,
just.
going back to Last of Us 6, there was just a lot of moments that we can talk about.
Yeah, I honestly like the way they introduced each of the factions, like Murian, you know, Kazura dropped.
Oh my god, I'm still annoyed about that. She's still not a servant after 2 years.
Yeah, we still don't have all the Sakura 5. It's crazy that
FGO never finishes a set. No Tawamonai, no All Knights of the Round Table, because what's his name?
Personal?
Agravain.
is still not a character.
yeah, honestly I'm annoyed that Agravain's still not playable. It's been years since Camelot, dude.
Shinsen
What the fuck?
Gumi, at least the main characters are not there. The Knights of Charlemagne are all there. I'm like, come on, at least finish one set. The BB5, it's just 5.
No. We got an yeah.
This
We
is like-
almost got the BB5.
We haven't got the BB5.
But yeah, honestly, there's really so much to go through this. Holy
and
shit!
there's Aurora.
Oh my god, Aurora.
Oh.
It basically saw. Hey, she's a very terrible human being. Like that's just
Well, she's
crazy.
a fairy, actually.
Yeah,
she's a
actually,
fairy.
she's a very yeah.
No, but thing is, she's basically the epitome of what the fairies from the beginning of the story of Lost Book 6 were like.
Oh yeah,
Completely self-absorbed.
yeah, because the way it's interesting the way the story introduces after the master gets lost, he ends up in this forest where these outcast fairies are.
Woods.
Yeah, the Nameless Woods, and that's where you meet Castria and
That one fairy.
and when they find out that you're a human, they basically go completely crazy. And I think that was a brilliant start to the chapter because it really sets the tone for what we can expect from the fairies moving forward. What can we expect from the rest of the story of this chapter moving forward? It was a great beginning, and obviously, yeah, just seeing all the other like the leaders of the factions like Murian and Woodwoes, and even Spriggan got like focus like.
Yeah, Spriggan was actually human. I just
Yeah,
flew along
that's
his
surprising.
life. That was
Yeah,
insane.
Spriggan was a Japanese man, and he basically did this crazy plan to get like Morgan defeated, and he succeeded when you think about it. Yeah, the way it all.
Also, Not Maeve was there, and
Now,
I love her character.
Knocknaria, yeah. Knocknaria is honestly pretty great. Like, obviously, I always love like original Maeve a lot because
Yeah.
she's just a fantastic villain, but Nocnaria is just great.
I found it really funny how this is the one Maeve that Cool actually likes.
Yeah, it's the only Maeve that Ku gets along with.
Oh, right. And this Ku caster that you meet, he's actually the same one from Fuyuki, and I like that.
And he also got redeemed by the most
oh my
redeemable
god,
character,
Ku caster, holy shit, dude. Like, Ku caster was one of the worst caster characters in the game.
He has that.
He's one of the worst 3 stars in the game, but then after both the upgrade in gameplay and his glow up in the story, he's just fantastic. I don't mind farming Narrowfest with him at all. He's it's actually fun to use Mr. Wickerman. Like, like the last time Ku was this cool was in remember when they did the anime for Fuyuki and he beat up Salter?
Yeah,
that was like the only time he was cool. But now he's actually even cooler with Lostbelt 6. And
for sure.
And remember when he was like arguing with Muramasa, because in a way, because it's so short of that.
This guy doesn't have any defensive skills.
It's to show how, Kuhulin and Emiya and Fate Stay Night never got along very well with each other. Well, it shows that even in a different universe, they still don't get along with each other.
That's just beautiful, honestly. That's a nice.
And I like how speaking of Muramasa, remember when they introduced him, he was in a cage.
Yeah, because they all thought he was a child of prophecy.
Yeah, they thought he was the child of prophecy, but he was just in a cage.
How he actually just became the fucking father figure to Castra.
Honestly, that's very interesting because like Shiro and Altria are always very close to each other, basically in every timeline. But this time, like even Muramasa was essentially a father figure to Castria. Other than Hector, who was basically her other father figure. And it was just Muramasa was reluctantly helping us the whole time because he can't betray, the Olga, but at the same time, he...
it's funny about the whole Hector thing that it actually took me a while to realize that the Hector from Ash's backstory, past, was the same old man. I was like, oh shit, that was the guy in the armor. I was like, whoa.
He's like, that's the guy, oh my god.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember the part where you're all about to cross a river, but then everyone just starts seeing stuff that they want, and they just start jumping in one after another?
Yep.
I was a little sad that for the main character, he's like, it's a holy grail. It's fine. It's only 1. 10 holy grails pop up, and then you just...
Sounds like a female protagonist moment right there from the manga.
The female protagonist the manga protagonist would get Saint Quartz, like infinite Saint Quartz, like gotcha.
Yeah. No, and then there's the sold out with Oberon.
Oh, which when you think about it, honestly, in a way, I already told you, but it's like almost like the fairies didn't want him there because they knew what Oberon was.
Not just that, Oberon doesn't really want anything except the destruction of
and Titania.
Technically, yes.
And which the fairy, even the water fairies couldn't give that to him.
Titania never exists.
And how Castro just stares at it, and then you see Muramasa just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Falls in.
Oh yeah, and he's like, really? That's what you wanted? I think it was Gareth.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But yeah, no, honestly, it was really...
No, Gareth wanted something related to
Castro. Honestly, though. Oh my god, there's just so many...
First of all...
Mother of God, we have not even gone through half the great characters in this.
First of all, storyline was fun. Gareth, oh my god, Gareth's stand against the siege of the...
Gareth's final...
I loved it.
When she gets observation hockey, remember? Yeah, and she starts seeing the future.
And when she gets that eternal guts, it's basically her just standing still until she finally finishes killing him. That was intense.
Yeah. Going back to Percival, his dynamic, with Melusine, Melusine, and him as essentially almost like a sibling, and Aurora, being her mom.
Technically, Melusine viewed Percival as a brother, but you can tell he was in love with her.
Well, was he though?
Yes. First of all, the first scene we see Percival thinking of Melusine was her. The first time he meets her, but she's just standing there in the rain, That's already a typical romance trope. And how he never really wanted to hurt her or anything, but he was willing to.
And the dude literally gave his life to fight her off, everything.
The thing is that he did have romantic feelings, but he knew he was never gonna. It was never amount to anything. But,
that's why they're always together in the banner, so you have a high chance of reuniting them in Chaldea.
Yeah.
Right.
Although sucks for him because Melusine basically.
His eyes were the master now.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, it kind of makes sense because like she lost her mom, she lost her brother, she lost her queen, she lost her country.
And
like,
it's all your fault.
And it's all, yeah. So yeah, she wants you to take responsibility for basically making her lose everything.
Something that it shocked me because during the chapter you notice that humans aren't in the Lostbelt. They don't live. As
Yeah, well,
long
technically
as...
there are humans, but they're all artificially made.
Yeah, and so
they're all killed in bargain system.
But they don't live as long as regular humans do, like in proper human history. I think in total, like how many years?
It's like
30.
30.
Right?
Yeah, 30.
When Percival used the lance of
Longinus.
when he used the lance, you notice that he aged because his hair just went darker.
Technically,
in one
from the moment he took the lance, he aged 10 years because he was actually they say that he was actually 10 years younger than what he looked like. He was supposed to be 15 or something.
Yeah.
And mentally, but physically, he already looked like a 26-year-old, something like that.
Yeah.
Because the lance just aged him, kind of like the opposite of.
Yeah, that's why you can't use the lance except in certain parts of the story, like versus Wood Woes or against Melusine.
Yeah, I mean that lance isn't meant to be wielded by a human. That thing will just drain the life out of anyone that touches it. The Excalibur was the opposite. It basically stopped the body from aging, and then Rangaminian just enhances the it just turns you into a fairy or something like that that.
Yeah, I think it's something like that, yeah.
But the point is that these weapons aren't really meant for humankind. They are a weapon used to fight for humanity, but ironically they're not really meant to be in human hands forever. They're just for a temporary moment, kind of like the seals on Excalibur and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the 13 seals of the round table.
Yeah, I would, and honestly, like, just getting into stuff like Oberon.
I did find it funny, before we continue with Oberon, that instead of the trope where the character that has this super weapon and after use of his body changes, instead of it turning from like typical black or brown hair to white, it was white and then turned the opposite.
Yeah.
That was actually pretty fun.
It was nice, yeah.
Yeah, but then getting to Oberon, oh my god, I remember seeing this guy for the first time 2 years ago. I'm thinking, who the fuck is this ugly motherfucker? Like, like you're telling me he's an important character? I can't take him serious. Look how skinny his arms is. I can't take him seriously if he looks like Betty Spaghetti.
Starts reading Lostbelt.
And then we actually read Lostbelt 6, and he's an incredible character. Even if it weren't for the fact that he's amazing in gameplay, he's still someone I wanted anyway because
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I was like,
just the way he was essentially like watching over everyone in the group, like Castria, the main character,
and then when you realize that everything he says is a lie, that one scene where Master asks him, "You really love Castria, don't you?" You know, and she's like, "Yes." It's like, and he blushes and everything. I'm like, "Well, you think everything?" All those conversations were a lie. And I'm like, whoa.
Like nothing Oberon ever said ever had substance to him. Although I do get the feeling that he genuinely did want the search for Titania.
Yeah, the thing is that like if you read his bonds after you get into Bond 6, it's just kind of stupid, honestly. But this is one scene where he says that even when he wants to tell the truth, if he were to tell the truth, he's always forever cursed to, never. You can never tell because everything's supposed to be a lie.
Yeah.
It's like kind of sad, really.
Like I remember like a small part of it. It goes from, if he says that I like you, it comes out as him saying I dislike you. And when he says I dislike you, it goes even worse, saying that I find you like disgusting.
Repulsive.
Like, yeah. Like basically nothing he ever says that has any substance.
He's always
it's what it's trying to say. It's not it's not so much that everything is the opposite of what it says. It's more like nothing he says has any substance.
Yeah.
And it makes it very interesting because the main character can figure out the mystery of Oberon even before Sherlock can. Because remember, like the red dialogue choice. Now all that's left is.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, oh shit, because
it also hits hard when you notice that Altria and Morgan, since they're part of the Inner Sea, they also have Fey eyes, which means that they can tell when someone's lying. So when they notice Oberon is saying something to the main character, they automatically know that he is lying. But it's also different. But it's also like a little weird though. Is that
Yeah,
they never
yeah.
really like say it. To
Yeah. You know,
the
there's
main character.
there's like a scene where Oberon says something. I forget which one it was, but immediately after he says it, you see Castria like with a shocked expression, and we find out that it's because she was looking at Oberon with her eyes. She saw that he was lying.
I think the I don't know, maybe that the reason why they did that is because at the end of the day, Altria or Castria was just in a completely different mindset. Like she was already how do I say this beaten down by the fact that she hates fairies. She's supposed to be the chosen ones to protect them.
Oh yeah, that honestly, Castria. I remember first time I saw her like in the 5th anniversary of JP, thinking, "Oh great, another saber, how original!" And
now we're saying that again in the anniversary.
And she's drawn by Takeuchi. Daring today, aren't we? But actually going through the story of Lostbelt 6, and honestly, like I think she's the best saber face we've had so far. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, honestly,
she genuinely has a great character arc. It's very compelling. We get to see everything she dislikes, and
funny enough, I haven't talked about Morgan at all.
Oh my god, more.
No, we're gonna get to that. Trust me, I will mention it.
Like I said, this Lostbelt is just so good. It could have been its own video game. In fact, it's so long. It should have been its own video game.
Yeah.
But I think this Lostbelt is longer than Persona 5 Royal. I haven't checked the exact word count of Persona 5 Royal, but it probably is. It's just. I mean, I know for a fact it's longer than The Witcher 3.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Morgan is probably one of the best villains, but not in the sense that she's evil because she's evil, because it's one of those villains where you can tell she had a moment where she maybe could have been saved, but she never wanted to be saved. She was she had already accepted what she had done, and she was willing to see it through.
Her becoming the queen of all fairy Britain, and just the sacrifices she was willing to go through after seeing how everyone.
She pulled the Kingdom Hearts. It was Xehanort there.
Yeah. She went back in time and corrupted her younger self, and then did change everything. Oh my god, it was crazy.
Technically, she didn't corrupt herself. It's more like she just let her know, this is what's gonna happen. So at this point, just give up now and let's do.
But the way
Ash was already like losing the fight.
Yeah. Honestly, it was the moment that Uther was killed that really broke her, because
I mean, she died in that scene.
When Uther died, there's also a moment in the dialogue where she even says that she actually transformed a fairy to look exactly like her, and then she made her escape.
Well, that was after she got her memories brought from the past, from the future. But originally she does die at that point. That's where everything, that's where after Ash dies, just after Uther gets killed, is where the other calamity starts and everything starts getting.
Oh yeah, when Nash goes back in time and sees Ash and Totterot, Habby Cat, that's another character we haven't even talked about yet. Like Habby Cat.
A very broken writer for QP farming too.
Yeah, it's just.
I remember when Beryl goes back to his Lostbelt, Fairy Britain. Morgan, he summons Morgan. He's like, "Oh wow, I was not expecting this to happen." And then he goes to sleep, and then he wakes up all in the castle. There's a certain dialogue that it still weirds me out a bit, which is like, she changed the past. So in a sense, Beryl did die, but he's still there.
Yeah, basically everything got recreated inside the Lostbelt. So basically, Beryl died, and a perfect copy with all his memories is there. Honestly, that's pretty freaky when you think about it.
Yeah, he chose not to think about it that for a long.
To be fair,
I mean, I don't.
He never cared about his life.
Honestly, they did try to do the typical. For Beryl, I think he's definitely one of the weaker cryptors, because unlike the other ones have pretty great motivations. Well, Beryl comes across as an evil dude, which is not bad, but he's like it's
not so much that the evil part is just he's literally he just wants to do what makes life fun for him, and that's it. He doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, they kind of tried to give him something like with the backstory with his granny who was a witch and everything.
During his backstory too, it's also a little bit interesting that we also get his time in Calia, where he always went to visit Mash, but in doing so, he always essentially broke her hands. Mash was his own grand piano for him to play. He's like talking about this too. And he also mentions that it was Dr. Romani who actually like punches him and then forcefully removes him out. And in doing so, he loses access to that whole area of Chaldea. He like it shows his obsession with MASH near the end also, where he essentially asks the main character to like just let me have her married. It's like
no.
You're just like no.
Yeah. It's just honestly what
His
happened.
transformation was like actually surprising. I was not expecting.
Yeah, honestly, there's just so much to go through this chapter. We even talked about Bargast yet?
No.
We haven't even talked about Babanshi.
And like that was a sad one. I remember at first I didn't really care much for her, but then when you realize everything she's gone through, because she's basically the outcast of the whole fairies in the big circle.
Yeah.
How they just kept taking advantage of her to the point where she's just always dying, and it's kind of sad. Even Morgan took pity on her, and one is like, the only way for you to survive is by being cruel, and even that didn't work.
It was also the very first and only fairy that was actually genuinely nice to Morgan.
But technically, Toro Happy Cat is like...
Yeah. Happy Cat was also happy. Before she met her Happy Cat, it was Babanshi.
Yeah. Wait, she met Babanshi before Happy Cat?
Yeah, they mentioned that Babanshi was the first fairy that was like genuinely nice to her.
Okay.
And that's why she did the whole thing about making her cruel in the next life, because she wanted her to survive and not be taken advantage of. They also mentioned stuff like how she's the calamity of Darlington and all that.
What I find it funny is that these other fairies complaining how she's cruel and merciless, even though the fairies themselves are complete assholes.
Yeah, the fairies are especially. Yeah. It's just
bias, honestly. This is bullshit.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, and Bargast's whole story, like how Bargast is cursed to always devour anyone she loves, and she's just someone that wants like genuine companionship, someone to like love her back, but she's always cursed to eat them, and
that she's basically looking out for the strong, how her view of the strong should be versus the weak. And that one scene where she comes back into the village, everyone's just doing that horrible
which we're not gonna describe. But it's just even in the game's story, they're obscuring what they're doing to them, and it's just a very messed up scene.
Watch Goblin Slayer.
It's just a very the whole thing's very.
It's a lot. It's basically this specific Lostbelt works a lot of psychological trauma, and even touches upon it with the master side. When he's in the
Garden of Lost Wills, which is by far the scene that redeemed the main character of FGO, because we finally. Well, first he talks. Let's start with that.
We actually
without our help.
Because this is not. I don't think this is the first time the main character talks. Because I believe the Tomo event Setsubun, he does talk there a bit briefly, but this is the first time where he says something that carries a lot of substance, a lot of weight to it. We genuinely learn his insecurities in the Garden of Lost Wills, and how with Kadok he might be replaced himself now, that they won't need him anymore, or how he's constantly carrying the weight of the guilt of all the Lostbelts within him. I mean, that technically they try to reference that beforehand, but this is the first chapter where instead of being told that he feels guilty about all this, that we are actually shown that how he feels, which is very different. And just the way it all goes, how he decides to move forward through carrying all that weight, it's just amazing.
The fact that during that whole like scene too, Cashier herself notices, and she says, let me at least help the main protagonist and like cut them off so then they don't experience this anymore. You automatically just like you get back up even though you're supposed to like not in the Garden of Lost Wills. And a dialogue that I remember seeing before Cassia mentions that she wants to like sever your thing to help you.
Yeah.
I think it was, if I remember correctly, the dialogue he said is that he was always mentally preparing himself to always see someone die in front of him. That's like the dialogue that got stuck with me, because in a sense it's kind of true. because everything that's currently happened, every Lostbelt that you've essentially like pruned away, that's what happens, and you still have to move forward.
Yeah, his expectation is already the worst of them all. He's like, he already knows what he has to do, so he's just mentally prepared to an extent of what happens.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it doesn't affect them or phase them. It's just he already knows it has to happen in order for him to reach his goal.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the most fucked up part when you think about it, because it's like he's willingly admitting to himself that I do have to kill to get to where I need to go.
Yeah.
And even though I fucking hate it.
Yeah, that's something that's actually talked about in another game in the Fate series, Fate Extra, because the main character in Fate Extra doesn't have any memories of his past life, and he meets all these other masters that have their own goals, what they want to do when they reach the Moon Cell, the Holy Grail War, and they win. But because of the way the Holy Grail War in Fate Extra is set up, he has to kill everyone. No exception. He has to kill Leo. He has to kill Rin. He has and Shinji. He has to get rid of so many of these people, and you don't even know if he has anything to live for in his own life. But it's thanks to the support of his servant, which is either Nero, Tom, or Emiya, that he's able to push forward and. Or I get in Fate X still, he has Ultra, but oh my god, what else can we even say about this Lostbelt?
Abby Cat honestly had a very sad ending, but
she had very bad memory, and ultimately remembering Mash is what erased her from the world.
Technically, Mash remembered her.
Mash remembered her, so it erased her from the world, and
Honestly, overall, it was just too freaking good.
Honestly,
and then there's the fucking boss battles.
Oh my god, the boss fights are intense as fuck.
Melusine.
First off, when Boreas gave you the big suck and took your command spell, I was like, what the fuck? She can do that? She just did that.
This is something funny I noticed. Because the first time it happens, you're not expecting it. And it's like, oh shit, wait, what's happening? No, my command spells. The next time you fight Vargas, I did this and I was like, I'll wait for the 3 days. I'll wait for my command spells to regenerate. I used them all. I beat her. I continue the story. The next fight I enter, this isn't like a Vargas fight. This is like a basic fight of you just fighting the Moors. I look at the top right corner. All my command spells are there. So technically for the Vargas fight, the second one at least, I don't remember the first one. But for the second one, you can waste all your command spells, and the next fight you enter, even though the 3 days haven't passed, you still have your original command spells.
I don't know if it works that way, but at the very least, if she sucks your command spells away, then they just give them back to you at the end of the fight.
It's just part of the story.
It's just for dramatic effect, really.
But it was so pretty cool.
It was really nice, though.
Yeah, I remember the one-on-one fight between Castria and Babanshi.
I immediately told us, there's no fucking way in hell I'm gonna try to do this.
Just use the blue cubes there, man. It's not worth it. Mm-hmm. I beat it without the blue cubes, and did I feel a sense of pride and accomplishment? No.
I mean, I did. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, but you used the blue cubes, didn't you?
No.
Okay.
I used all my blue cubes for the semi-final boss. I'm not proud of it because I also used my command spells. I hated that fight so much, I said, screw it, not dealing with this shit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and then the fight against the Calamities, against, Melusine and the big Vargas.
Yeah.
Dude, the Vargas fight, God.
Oh, yeah, when you summon, the Gawain and Lancelot, oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, that was awesome.
That was hype.
Because Vargas' dream also was to meet the Knights of the Round Table.
I mean, in a way,
excluding the fact that she already saw Tristan. We get to see Gawain and Lancelot, and I was like, "Yo, this is cool."
She's a total sin for Gawain, though.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, can you blame her?
What I did find funny, if you look at in Melusine's voice lines, where she sees, so that's Lancelot, the knight that based upon whose name I inherited, and then she's like, wait, why is she and Tristan doing things that a knight shouldn't be doing with another? It's like, wait. Is that what Lady Morgan thought of me? It's like, and I was like, whoa, it actually fits. Considering how she joined Morgan because she wanted to be and help Aurora all this time. So why she was cheating on Morgan. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just... Oh my God, where are we?
Honestly, we could keep going on and on, but at the end of the day, the point is Lostbelt 6 was extremely
Yeah, honestly, like my mind is just blank now. I think we've shilled Lostbelt 6 hard enough. Lostbelt 6 is the best chapter in FGO, and I'm glad that after all these years, let's look at our final ranking. Our final ranking. First, at the very bottom we have Orleans, London, Septim, and Agartha, easily the worst chapters of FGO. I think I said earlier that this is disorganized, but honestly, this is exactly what I think of them.
Shit is shit. Doesn't matter what order it is.
Yeah. Honestly, they're just the weakest chapters. And like I said, like Agartha, for example, had Penthesilea, who's a really cool character, and Columbus, who's a fun villain. So it's not like the characters were lacking. It's just they didn't know how to make all of this work in the right way. And then for D tier are the below average chapters. Here's Shinjuku, America, and Okeanos. And yeah, honestly, I remember years ago before I played FGO, I think the first animated trailer I ever saw of FGO was actually of America. And I remember thinking, wow, a story chapter set in America. This is going to be so hype when I get to play through it. And yeah, it was very disappointing, but yeah. Honestly, it kind of... it's kind of like how Shinjuku has, like, Jalter. I mean, you would think that Jalter is a very popular character, that she would be in an amazing story chapter, but... I mean, Steven, you're the resident Jalter sim. How do you feel about the story chapters that Jalter's been part of?
Honestly, I feel like it's wasted potential. Don't get me wrong, I mean, Jalter is still John at the end of the day, just a little more evil. But it's she's basically a tsundere. You know, she likes the master. She's just never gonna admit it.
Yeah, it's like one of her.
Like,
Sorry.
Like that scene where she finally gets to dance with the master, and that was actually pretty wholesome. But you know, like it still kind of sucks that they're always putting her in the back burner. And even though to this day, even in JP, she's still one of the most popular servants.
Yeah, like JP added the summer Jalter as like the part of the freebie shop that you can get the coins for the freebies and all that.
I'm so pissed that she's the first servant.
And they even revealed that she was one of the most popular servants. Like the summer version was one of the most popular servants to get to 120. And JP only added that like a month before they revealed that ranking. Like this is it's like I said earlier in the video.
It's still not animation
like
updates.
it's like I said earlier in the video that most gacha games would kill to have a character as popular as Jalter, but
Yep.
yeah. And think about it. Remember when we saw that ranking of like what are the most popular story chapters in JP, and Shinjuku was in the top 10? For starters, completely disagree. There's multiple other chapters I would put there beforehand.
For sure.
Secondly, if anything, I would say that says a lot more about Jalter's legacy more so than anything. That even having a chapter where she's a major character in it still is enough to boost the entire chapter up in terms of fan reception. Yeah. And yeah, honestly, there's not much else to say. For the mid chapters, we got Lostbelt 3 and the 2 prologue chapters. Like I said, yeah, these are not bad chapters, but there's nothing too impressive about them. And like I said, I'm still just kind of on the fact that Lostbelt 3 kind of, at the start with the Wandering Sea, kind of took us out of that desperate act by putting us in the New Chaldea. I think it was a bit too early. I think if we did that like right before Lostbelt 5, it would have been a bit more impactful, especially with how desperate the situation in Lostbelt 5 was. Yeah. And for the B tier, we got Lostbelts 1 and 2. They're the only ones in B tier, by the way. Although, yeah, I don't know. Like, depends on how I feel like about sometimes I feel like Solomon should be in B tier. It really depends on my mood every day. But honestly, like I'm putting Solomon in like low A tier just because that finale had a perfect atmosphere and all that. Yeah, overall, Lostbelt 1 and 2 were pretty good chapters. Not the best, but still very solid. I enjoyed them. And yeah, the rest is just the best chapters FGO has, which notice how these are the most populated tiers. It definitely shows that FGO storytelling has improved in the recent years, and yeah, overall, we're really looking forward to Lostbelt 7 and the Lostbelt 6.5 thing that's happening next year in June. And yeah, that's about it. Let me know what you guys think. Like if you like the video, put a dislike if you dislike, and share everyone. Like go into the comment section, see if you agree with me or you say no, you are actually wrong. The whole thing's wrong. This is how I would rank the story chapters. No, I want to hear what everyone else has to say. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.